Lady in a Fog by Lester Powell.
This all began in a bar, the way so many things begin with me. Sometimes I think I'll stay out of bars and so keep out of trouble, but somehow I never seem to get round to it. Well, this little bar was in Half Moon Street, just off Piccadilly, and it had soft glamour lighting and thick carpets and an air of refined indulgence. A nice little place if you happen to like that kind of place. I do. The name's Odell, by the way, Philip Odell. Irish. Of course, like most true Irishmen, I spent the best part of my life keeping away from the old country, mostly in North America. But I mean to go back someday. In fact, I was actually on my way when this happened. I had my seat booked on the plane, my bags packed and everything. And then what must I do but go and call up Heather McMara?
Hello?
Heather, this is Odell.
Odell!
Am I still your favorite man?
Where did you spring from?
Germany. I just got in this morning. You were the first person I thought of. Could we kick it around a bit tonight, you think, in celebration of this great moment?
I don't see why not. Where shall we meet?
Well, what about the old place in Half Moon Street?
Lovely. I'll be there at 7 sharp.
I'd better explain a couple of things about Heather McMara. She had soft auburn hair and a pair of greenish eyes that a man could easily lose his banknotes in. And she had no sense of time whatsoever. The result was that I spent a full half hour in this bar, dangling my feet and thinking of nothing in particular. And then a little fat guy came in, ordered a double brandy, gulped it down, and went out again as if all the characters in Edgar Allan Poe were on his heels. After this, the barman came over to where I was sitting and said,
Does that every night, he does. Always a double. Never says a word, opts in and opts out. Extraordinary.
perhaps he likes silence with his brandy.
Oh, more to it than that. Much more. He's running away from something. Something inside his mind.
How do you figure that out?
I can always tell. Watch people, sum 'em up. Never wrong. Astonishing the way I do it.
You're new here, aren't you?
3 months.
I thought I hadn't seen you before. Give me another scotch, will you?
Right, sir.
Have one yourself.
Thanks, kind of you. Yes, I can sum a person up without even speaking to him. Here's your scotch.
Thanks.
Keep mine till after.
Here's luck.
I summed you up in the first 10 minutes, I did.
You did?
I did. You're Irish. You got one of them long, humorous faces women go for. Dress well, too, especially tonight. Therefore, you're waiting for a woman.
How do you do it?
Gift. Had it all my life. Tell you something else. This woman you're waiting for, she ain't your wife.
No?
No. You shaved this evening. No man shaves twice a day for his wife.
Sounds reasonable. Cigarette?
Thanks. Keep it till after. Another thing. You're either a biter or an investigator of some sort.
Now, how do you know that?
You listen. Only writers and detectives do that. The rest talk.
Do they?
Your girl's just come in. 45 minutes late.
You haven't had time to sum her up, I suppose.
Wouldn't say that. Looks like she enjoys life. Yeah, I'd predict you was in for a good evening with her. Very good.
Thanks. I'll go and see if you're right.
Oh, there you are, Odell.
Angel. Oh, it's good to see you. Now, where would you like to sit? A table or a stool at the bar?
Table, I think. I'd hate to waste all the work I've put in my front view on a barman.
Well, it wouldn't be wasted on that barman. He's the original magic eye. He sees beneath the surface.
In that case, a table, definitely. This'll do nicely. A good long way from the bar.
You won't get away from the barman. He serves the tables as well.
Oh.
Now, what'll it be?
Something with gin, I think.
Well, how are you, Angel? It's a long time, you know.
Too long. You're one of the few men in my life I can bear to see more than once a year.
Double scotch and a dry martini.
His intuition is wonderful, Odell. Dry martini's just what I want.
Thank you, madam. I never miss.
Oh, here's to you, Angel.
Cheers.
Do you, like that barman?
I think he's sweet.
You wouldn't want him to go home tonight and feel that his day's been a failure, would you?
What do you mean?
Well, he predicted we were going to have a good evening together. He prides himself on always being right in his predictions. Now, unless I've forgotten how to read the signs, you're not in a very gay mood, Angel.
Well, no, I'm not. As a matter of fact, I'm very worried.
Anything you'd care to put a name to?
Yes, I was going to tell you anyway. Philip, my brother was killed yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did it happen?
He was found in the Thames near Teddington.
Accident?
No. He was the finest swimmer I've ever known.
Suicide?
He was much too self-centered to kill himself. No, I think he was murdered.
Murdered?
I'm sure of it.
Well, what did the police say?
Oh, they say it was an accident. Of course, the exact cause of death won't be established until after the inquest, but I'm sure that he was murdered.
But have you anything to go on?
No. Nothing definite. He led a rackety kind of life, I'm afraid. He was mixed up with some tough characters. I want you to help me to find out more about it, Philip.
Me?
Well, you're the only detective I know.
Angel, I'm not a detective.
You were in the Secret Service.
I was attached to the American Office of Strategic Service. Not the same thing. Besides, the job was mostly rubber stamp, sitting behind a desk, writing reports.
And what about the time you were dropped behind the German lines in Normandy? That was a rubber stamp job, I suppose?
How did you know about that?
Oh, I keep my ear to the ground. I've heard you described as the finest agent in the American service. So, I reckon that more than qualifies you to find the person who killed my brother.
Angel, I'm flattered that you should say all this, but honestly, the kind of work I've been doing for the past dozen years isn't half as exciting as it sounds. We're civil servants working in a rather uncivil atmosphere, that's all.
Your modesty becomes you, Odell, but...
Now, look, you'd be much better to leave this to the police. They really know how to catch murderers.
Well, I'm going to find out all I can.
Look, I'd like to help you, Angel, really I would, but I'm on my way to Dublin. The plane leaves at 5:30 tomorrow afternoon. That doesn't leave me time enough to solve anything more complex than a kid's crossword puzzle, now does it?
You could try, couldn't you?
What's that perfume you're wearing, Angel?
It's called indiscretion.
You got a license to use it?
Then you will help me?
How can I help myself?
Come along, then. I've got a cab waiting outside.
Now, Angel, don't you think you better tell me more about your brother?
Well, Ricky was what people call a waster. Handsome, charming, quite unscrupulous, and with an incredible dislike of work. He left home when he was 18, and even at that age he'd been mixed up in some unpleasant business.
Was he your only brother?
Yes, I didn't see him for years. I was never quite sure what he did. Oh, he'd appear every now and again, take me out and give me a wonderful evening, and then depart with my bank balance in his pocket. He was vain, but he had this bubbling charm and was quite irresistible, at least to women, especially to Marilyn Peters.
And who might Marilyn Peters be?
Ricky's girlfriend, and that's who we're going to see.
Yes, what is it?
We'd like to talk to Miss Peters.
She's not seeing anybody.
I'm Heather McMara, Ricky McMara's sister.
Oh, you'd better come in then. And who's this?
Mr. Odell, he's a detective.
Now, look, I said...
He's making inquiries into my brother's death.
Oh, a nasty business, Mr. Odell. Handsome young fellow like that, too. Doesn't seem right, does it?
Golden boys and girls all must, like chimney sweepers, come to dust.
Pardon?
Did you know Ricky well, Mrs.
Oh, Cantaloupe. A silly name, isn't it? French for melon, you know. Imagine. Of course, it's my husband's, not mine. My name's Pickfarthingale.
Oh, really?
Yes. Mr. McMara was here a lot on account of the way things were between him and Miss Peters.
And, how were they?
Oh, very cosy, yes. Well, I'll take you to her room. Of course, she's been really upset since he went, really upset. It's been heartbreaking to see her. This is her room.
Who is it?
Lady and gentleman to see you, love.
I told you I don't want to see anyone.
The lady's Mr. Ricky's sister, love.
Oh, all right. Ask him to come in.
You can go in now.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Odell, Miss Peters. We wanted to ask you a few things about Ricky.
Oh, sit down, won't you?
Thank you.
The place is a bit untidy. All right, Mrs. Cantaloupe, you can go.
Oh, all right. But call me if you need me.
Old harpy, poking and prying. Well, what's it you want?
Well, Miss McMara thinks Ricky was murdered, Miss Peters, and if he was, we owe it to him to try and find out who did it.
What do you owe him? How do you know he'd want you to interfere?
I don't, but Miss McMara isn't satisfied, and as she's his sole remaining relative...
I'm the only person who ever cared about Ricky. I'm the only one he ever trusted. No one else understood him. He hated you all. All of you.
Perhaps we shouldn't have come so soon.
I'm the only one who cared whether he lived or died.
We'll go now. Perhaps we could come back later.
No. No, don't go. I'll be all right. I'll help you if I can.
Thank you.
What do you want to know?
When did you see him last?
The day before he died. In the morning, he came to the shop where I work. Beaucaires in Bruton Street. It's a beauty salon.
What happened?
I was engaged with a customer at the time. Ricky suddenly appeared in the cubicle and put his arms round me and kissed me. A rather funny thing happened.
Yes? What was it?
I happened to glance in the mirror and I saw the customer's face. She was staring at Ricky. She looked as if she hated the sight of him.
Did he recognize her?
Yes. At least I think he did. He turned quite pale and looked as if he was scared. I'd never seen him scared before. That's what was so funny.
Did they speak?
No. I thought she was annoyed because there was a man in the cubicle. She'd taken off her blouse, you see. So I pushed him outside and apologized. But it didn't do any good. She was in a frightful rage, threw 3 pounds onto the chair and rushed out without waiting to finish her facial.
What happened to Ricky?
He disappeared. After a bit, I went round to the little coffee shop in Bond Street where we often met. But he wasn't there. I never saw him again.
Did you know the customer?
No, never seen her before. She wasn't a regular.
Can you describe her?
Yes, I can. She made a big impression on me. She was exceptionally beautiful. I see a lot of beautiful women in that shop, but she really was outstanding.
Young?
She was in her early 30s, I'd say, with big cornflower blue eyes and jet black hair, and a skin like silk, without a blemish on it.
Anything else, Miss Peters?
She had money, plenty of it. She arrived at the shop in an enormous car with a chauffeur. She was wearing a mink worth at least 5,000. Heavenly.
What did Ricky do for a living?
Well, he started to work for a bookmaker about 6 months ago. A man called Hector O'Gorman of Islington.
Good job?
I don't know. Sometimes he'd have as much as 300 pounds in his pocket.
He didn't say where he got it, I suppose.
No, but I assumed he got it betting.
Did he seem worried about anything?
Ricky wasn't the sort to worry.
One more thing. It's not a nice question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. Do you think Ricky had any affairs with other women?
Oh, I know he did. He was terribly attractive to women, and he knew it. He couldn't leave them alone. But he always came back to me.
Well, thanks, Miss Peters. You've been very helpful. If you should think of anything you might think would be useful to us, you know you can reach me at the Valida Hotel in Piccadilly. I'll be there until tomorrow afternoon.
Here we are. 1 scotch, 1 dry martini.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry I was so long. Ah, the drinks have arrived.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well,
Fine, thank you.
what about it?
What about what?
The notebook you pinched from Marilyn Peters' room.
Oh, that.
Yes, that. Hand it over.
Oh, dear. A man gets no private life with you around. Here you are.
A diary. Whose is it?
Ricky's.
How do you know that?
His name is in it.
Oh, doesn't seem to be much in it. Train times and a lot of money calculations.
Now look at the back under addresses.
There's only 2 names. Christopher Hampton and Martin Sorrowby.
Those names mean anything to you?
No, should they?
If you read the papers, they should. Christopher Hampton's a big racehorse owner, the kind they call a millionaire sportsman. And Sowerby's the editor of one of the most influential newspapers in Europe.
What are they doing in Ricky's diary?
That's what I would like to know.
Oh, I'm glad you said that, Odell.
Oh, why?
Because you're going to find out.
Am I? How?
You're going to call on them.
When?
Tomorrow.
Now, look, Angel, my plane leaves at 5:30 tomorrow afternoon, and I'm leaving with it.
Of course you are.
It's very important. For years, I've longed to see the old home and my old mother.
You haven't got a mother.
Well, the old home, then. Now, you know how the Irish are about the old home. They write songs about them, even.
You do want to help me, don't you, darling?
Well, Angel, I don't know that I do.
Well, you do want us to have a pleasant evening together, like the barman prophesied. Don't you, darling?
Oh, dear. This is where she goes into her blackmail. All right, Angel, I'll do it. I'll go and see Hampton and Sowerby in the morning. And now, might we address ourselves to that pleasant evening we were talking about? The time's getting short.
Oh, I didn't mean this evening. I'm going home now.
You're what?
And you ought to go to bed, too.
But it's only 9:30.
Well, you want to be fresh for Hampton and Sowerby, don't you? Good night, Philip. Sleep well.
Now, look, Angel. Heather, come back a minute.
Did you call, sir?
Oh, it's you.
Anything you want, sir?
Here, take this pound out and go out and buy yourself a new crystal ball. A pleasant evening, he predicted. The next morning, there was one of those pea super fogs, the kind you usually see only in a Hollywood movie about London. Against my better judgment, I trusted myself out in it. Christopher Hampton lived in a turning off St. James's Street, in a very gentlemanly service flat, full of sporting prints and period furniture. I sent in my name and scribbled, "Concerning Ricky McMara," on the back of the card. Well, that opened his door like a charge of dynamite. I was ushered in so quickly it was embarrassing. Now, you couldn't actually smell horses when Christopher Hampton came into the room, but that was no fault of his clothes. He wore a canary yellow waistcoat with gilt buttons and narrow check trousers which looked like a pair of Scotch drainpipes. His face was the color of crushed strawberries, and obviously he hadn't worked it up on soft fruits. He had a queer kind of voice which didn't go at all with his horsey appearance. It was soft and snaky, like a length of oiled silk. It would have gone better with a Spanish inquisitor than with an English sportsman. He gave me a long, searching look and then said,
"You wish to speak to me about someone called McMara?
"That's right."
But I haven't the least idea who he is."
"No?"
"No."
"He had your name in his diary."
Oh, I don't think that signifies anything, Mr. Odell. I'm quite a well-known person, you know. Are you a friend of Mr. McMara's?
Of his sister. She asked me to make inquiries about him.
Has anything happened to him?
Only that he's been murdered.
Oh. Nasty business, murder.
Yes, isn't it?
Your medicine, Mr. Hampton.
Thank you, Parkin. Excuse me, Mr. Odell, my morning dose. Nerves, you know. Excuse me. Oh, disgusting stuff. Parkin.
Yes, sir?
Mr. Odell is a detective.
Is he, sir?
You're a crime fan, Parkin. What sort of detective would you say he was? One of the erudite gentlemen who quote the classics and pick their teeth with a piece of jade?
Oh, no, sir. Not that type at all.
A more rough and ready type, perhaps?
Definitely, sir. Popular with the more juvenile audiences.
Thank you, Parkin. You may take the glass away.
Yes, sir.
Charming character. How do you get him to move so quietly? Do you oil him?
Parkin knows I dislike people who tread clumsily. Rough and ready people.
I see. You're not going to tell me anything, then?
I can't. I didn't know you're Ricky McMara. Sorry. Now, I'm afraid I'll have to turn you out. I hope you won't think I'm rude.
I'm not interested in your manners, Mr. Hampton. I want to know what connection you had with Ricky McMara.
I told you I didn't know him.
Oh, of course. I forgot. Well, so long, Mr. Hampton. I have a plane to catch.
Going far?
Only across to Dublin.
A wise move.
What makes you say that?
London's a depressing place in the fog. Also dangerous. Lots of accidents in a fog.
Well, That was something, but not much. Clearly, Hampton was lying in his teeth. He also gave me a not very thickly veiled warning to lay off. It was beginning to get interesting. Well, I had one real clue. The lady in the beauty salon. The lady in mink. From what I'd heard of him, Ricky wasn't the sort of boy to be scared of a woman. But he'd been scared of her. I stored that away in my mind for future reference and went off down to Fleet Street to see Martin Sorrowby. The name of Ricky McMara did its stuff once more as an open sesame, and I was wafted straight up into the presence. There was plenty of green carpet in Sorrowby's office, although not quite enough to cover a football pitch. From the door, you could just make out his enormous walnut desk. On a fine day, that is. As near as I could figure, Sorrowby was around about 40 and very cultured. He had the kind of face that goes with a glass of Russian tea. Disdainful, as if all the world was a bad smell under his delicate nostrils. When I came into his office and started on the long trek to the desk, he was looking out of the window with his back to me. He didn't turn round, but barked out in an edgy, high-strung kind of voice.
What the devil are you doing here? I told you never to come to this office.
Morning, Mr. Sorrowby. Quite a walk from that door, isn't it?
Well, who are you?
Odell. Philip Odell.
But the commissionaire said...
I know. I wanted to see you in a hurry, Mr. Sorrowby. I've discovered the name Ricky McMara opens doors quicker than a shout of fire in this town. So I sent up his name. May I sit down?
What do you want?
I represent McMara's sister.
Are you a lawyer?
No, I do this for love.
Well, tell me what you want. I'm a busy man.
On Thursday afternoon, Ricky McMara was found in the river.
Really? Well, what's that got to do with me?
That's what I hope you're going to tell me. I come of a long line of optimists. Do you mind if I smoke?
I didn't know, McMara.
Look, Mr. Sorrowby, when a guy starts asking questions about a thing like this, he expects to get handed a lot of lies. That's in the cards, but let's keep somewhere near the rules and make some pretense at intelligence. Now, when I came in the door, you thought I was McMara. Don't let's try to fool ourselves that you were thinking of someone else.
You're a detective, aren't you?
Yes, all right, I'm a detective. But, come to the point, will you? I have a plane to catch.
Your methods are very quaint, Mr. Odell.
Rough and ready, popular with juvenile audiences. What are you trying to cover up, Mr. Sorrowby?
Cover up?
Your hands are trembling like a girl on her first date.
Oh, it's my nerves. I have to have treatment.
You too, eh? Interesting.
What do you mean?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I'd talk if I were you.
Well, I don't mind. I haven't anything to hide.
No, of course you haven't.
My relationship with Ricky McMara was strictly a la sourdine, if you understand me.
No, I don't. Let's stick to the mother tongue, shall we? In plain language, Mr. Sorrowby, what kind of a relationship?
He came to me and offered to provide material for a series of articles on petty crime that I was planning. He seemed to know what he was talking about, so I agreed. I insisted that he should never come to this office.
Why?
Well, some of the material he gave me was dangerous. I always met him away from Fleet Street. That's why I was so annoyed when I thought you were he.
Are you trying to tell me you didn't know he was dead?
I didn't know until you told me.
I see. Well, that's not a bad story for the spur of the moment. Not at all bad.
Well, don't you believe it?
Not a single word.
And why not?
You have a crime reporter on this sheet, haven't you?
There are 3 crime reporters on this newspaper.
Yet you prefer to trust information given you by a cheap chiseler like McMara.
I don't know anything about McMara's murder.
Who said anything about murder?
But I thought you said...
I said he was fished out of the river.
Well, naturally, I assumed...
A thing no good journalist should do. But perhaps you're not a good journalist. All right, I'll go now. But one thing more. Do you know a man called Christopher Hampton?
I know of him. Why do you ask?
Well, I was wondering if you and he went to the same nerve specialist. I found him suffering from the jitters, too. Oh, never mind, don't answer. I'll go back to my hotel. Is there a chance of getting transport to that far-off door of yours?
Oh, Mr. Odell.
Yes?
A lady called to see you about half an hour ago.
Was she pretty?
Well, that's not really for me to say, is it? I mean, every man to his taste.
You know, you're a clever girl. You should go far. What did this young lady want?
She wanted to talk to you urgently. She was in a terrible state. The manager showed her up to your room.
Did you get her name?
Yes, Peters. Marilyn Peters.
Oh, well, I'll go right up. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I kept you, Miss Peters. I've been down to Fleet Street.
I'm so glad you've come.
Now, what's the trouble?
I'm frightened.
What's happened?
I'm being watched.
By whom?
I'm not sure. After you'd gone last night, I went to bed and fell asleep. I was wakened by the sound of someone trying to open my door. I'd locked it. Someone was turning the handle quietly. After a bit, they went away. I heard footsteps creeping down the stairs. Then I heard the front door go. I got out of bed and went over to the window. It must have been nearly dawn because there was some light in the sky. I saw a dark figure crossing the street.
Man or woman?
Woman. She stood in the middle of the street and flashed a torch. After a bit, a big car drove up. I saw the woman for a moment in the headlights.
Recognize her?
Yes. It was the customer I was telling you about. The lady in mink.
So, the beautiful lady in mink again, eh?
I'm really frightened. I don't know what to do.
Well, I think the best thing for you to do, Miss Peters, is to go to the police.
Oh, no.
Why not?
I don't think I'd want to do that.
Good sense.
I know, but I don't want to. I want you to help me.
Where are you going when you leave here?
To the shop. I'm due back in 10 minutes.
Will you go there? I think I'm going to stay in London. So, when you finish this evening, come here instead of going back to Sydney Street. All right?
Yes.
I'll think of something by this evening.
Thank you. You're very kind.
You were very fond of Ricky McMara, weren't you?
I was crazy about him.
Crazy enough to have killed him if he looked at another woman, even in a mirror.
Oh, no! No! I didn't kill him. That's absurd.
No, of course you didn't. I'll see you this evening, then. Hello, Heather?
Yes?
I would have rung you earlier, but Marilyn Peters was here.
Marilyn Peters? What did she want?
Well, after we left her last night, someone tried to break into her room. And Marilyn saw who it was.
Who?
That was that glamour girl in mink. The one Ricky saw in the beauty shop the day before he died.
What did Marilyn do?
Kept her door locked and then came round here to ask my advice. I told her to go to the cops, but she wouldn't.
Why not?
Maybe she knows more about Ricky's death than she cares to tell.
Then you must get her to tell.
You know, I had a feeling you were going to say that, Angel. And the fact is, I'm going to have a try. She's coming back here to the hotel after she finishes her work this evening. I thought it might be a good idea if you were here when she comes.
A very good idea. Marilyn Peters is a very good-looking woman.
Angel, how you misjudge me.
Odell, how I know you.
I spent the afternoon at a movie, but I didn't see much of the picture. I kept thinking about Ricky McMara and wondering why he had died. On the surface, it was an ordinary enough affair. McMara was a cheap little chiseler ready for any form of petty crime that might present itself. Characters like that get themselves knocked off frequently, which, if you like, is a rudimentary form of justice. But here there was something else. People like Christopher Hampton and Martin Sowerby were involved, to say nothing of the expensive number in mink who kept flitting in and out like a highly scented shadow. These people weren't cheap or chiseling. Hampton was a rich man, a racehorse owner, and more than usually intelligent for a man of his type. Sowerby was no fool either. He had risen to edit one of the world's leading newspapers entirely on his own efforts. Now, these two were way above McMara's class. Rogues they probably were, but they did it in champagne and silk. So how come McMara got himself tangled with them? And what happened so that it became necessary for someone to push him into the river? And then the lady in mink, where did she fit in? And Marilyn Peters, what was her angle? These questions kept chasing themselves around in my brain like a set of demented wasps, until it was time for me to get back to the hotel and to meet Marilyn and Heather. They were sitting in my room waiting for me, and when I opened the door, Marilyn Peters burst out,
I've seen her again, Mr. Odell.
Where?
Outside the shop. She was waiting for me, I'm sure. She was sitting beside the chauffeur. I recognized her by the mink coat. When I got into a taxi, she followed.
Did she follow you here?
No. I told the driver to drive round the side streets until we lost her. It wasn't very difficult in this fog.
That was smart of you.
I'm frightened. What am I going to do?
You won't go to the police?
No. Why are you looking at me like that? What are you thinking?
I'm wondering why you won't go to the cops.
I don't want to. Why? Do I have to give reasons for what I do?
No, but you came here to ask my advice. The sensible thing would be to take it.
There's no time. That woman means to kill me.
How do you know that?
I know.
Why should she want to kill you?
Let me try and supply an answer. Suppose Ricky had been carrying on an affair with 2 women at the same time. It wouldn't have been outside his range, not by a long way. One day, these 2 women find out, quite by chance. Woman number 1 goes into a beauty shop, and woman number 2 attends her. Ricky comes in. A terrific coincidence, maybe, but it could happen. The next day, Ricky is fished out of the river.
I didn't kill him. I loved him.
According to a character called Oscar Wilde, we always kill the one we love. An overstatement, possibly, but it disproves your point. You could have killed Ricky quite easily.
I didn't. I didn't.
Likewise, the lady in mink could have killed him. But the odds are slightly on you, Miss Peters.
Why?
Because you get panic-stricken whenever someone suggests calling in the cops.
Might I make a suggestion?
Of course.
Why don't we leave Miss Peters alone for a while? Let her think it over. Obviously, she knows more than she's told us. If she stays here quietly for an hour or so, she might feel more like taking us into her confidence. What do you say to that, Miss Peters?
I'll do anything. Except go back to that room in Sydney Street.
You'll be quite safe here in a big hotel. Come on, Philip. Let's go and get a breath of air.
In this fog?
It's lifting a little. We'll be back in about an hour, Miss Peters. Make yourself comfortable. Driver, will you take us to the White City?
No, miss, I won't.
Why? Haven't you got enough petrol?
No, it ain't that.
Well, the fog's lifted.
No, it ain't that either.
Well, what?
I make it a rule never to take a fare to a dog track.
Oh, you belong to an anti-gambling society, maybe.
I wish I did. No, mate. Dogs have already cost me 7 cabs, and I don't want to make it 8. I'll take you anywhere you like, but not to the White City.
Well, look, I'll make a deal with you. You wait outside with the flag down.
No. Oh, the minute you've gone, I'll be out of this seat and in there putting me days taken on the first dog I see.
Look, we'll be inside only for about 10 minutes. We'll tell a policeman not to let you in if you like. Oh, go on, please.
Well, all right, I'll chance it. But if I loses this cab, you'll have to buy me another.
How long have you been playing the dogs, Angel?
Oh, we're not going to the White City to gamble.
Oh, aren't we?
No, I took the afternoon off and went in search of Hector O'Gorman.
Hector O'Gorman. Now, who's he?
The bookie Ricky used to work for.
Oh, yes. You know, I haven't mentioned it lately, but you're awfully pretty, Angel.
Am I?
Let's go somewhere where there's some nice, quiet music and talk about it, huh?
No. And give me back my hand. We've got work to do. Oh, pay attention.
It's very difficult with that perfume you're wearing. What's it called?
Intrigue.
Yes. Last night it was Indiscretion. Have you got a fresh perfume for every day of the week?
Why not? A girl needs a daily change of personality to keep a fickle character like you interested. Oh, look, let's talk about O'Gorman.
Okay. Now, I take it we're going to the White City to see him.
How did you guess that?
Well, I'll tell you. I knew that excuse you gave Marilyn Peters was all baloney. When you said we were going to a dog track, it wasn't exactly difficult to connect the two. How did you find him, by the way?
I rang up his office.
You know, Heather, you have the makings of a great detective. I know more than one professional investigator who would never think of doing anything as simple as that.
Are you laughing at me?
Angel, what a suggestion.
Well, I never know with you. The thing I like about you is your sense of humor, but sometimes it scares me.
Here you are, White City. And don't forget to tell the coppers not to let me in.
Well, what's white about it? From up here, the people look like black ants.
Let's go down to the rails. A race is just starting. Oh, look, here comes the hare. Oh, I wish we had a bet. It seems silly to watch a race without having anything on it.
Seems silly to watch a race, period. Well, that didn't take long. Let's go and find O'Gorman. Are you Hector O'Gorman?
No? Who wants it?
I do.
Who are you?
A friend.
Okay. We'll find him up in the restaurant. Mr. O'Gorman, don't shout. The odds ain't that kind of a bookie.
Well, well. The English have class distinctions even when it comes to the way they lose money, have they? Come on, Heather. We'll try the restaurant.
Have you booked a table?
No. We don't want to eat. We want to see Mr. Hector O'Gorman.
Yes.
Can you show me his table?
Just a minute.
Why is everyone so suspicious in this place?
I don't know. I expected something to do with dog racing.
This way, please. He's in his private room.
Thank you.
You wanted to see me?
Maybe sit down.
Please do.
Let me introduce you. This is Miss McMara. I believe you knew her brother, Ricky.
Oh, yes. I heard about poor Ricky's death. It was a great shock to me. He was a good lad.
He used to work for you, didn't he, Mr. O'Gorman?
Well, he did a few odd jobs for me.
What sort of odd jobs?
I used him as a kind of contact man. He had charming manners. He got on well with people. He was very useful to me.
How much did you pay him?
Oh, I'm not sure. About a tenner a week.
Not bad for odd jobs.
What's your interest in this?
Miss McMara is anxious to find out as much as she can about her brother's friends or what he was doing around about the time of his death. Stuff like that.
I'd be awfully obliged if you could help us, Mr. O'Gorman.
Well, I don't see that I can. My relationship with your brother was purely a business one.
Mr. O'Gorman, do you know any reason why Ricky McMara might have been murdered?
Murdered?
Yes, murdered.
But I heard he'd had an accident and fallen in the river.
No, Mr. O'Gorman. He was murdered.
Oh, dear.
So you see, Mr. O'Gorman, if you do know anything, you'd be well advised to tell us.
Are you from the police?
No, this is a private inquiry, but we're only anticipating the questions the police will ask when they get round to it.
Well, I've told you all I know. I got to know Ricky casually. Now and then he'd lay a bet with me. One day he told me he was broke and asked if I could give him a job. I liked his manner, and I thought he could be useful to me, so I took him on. That's all.
How often did you see him?
About once a week. I don't know what he did with his spare time or who his friends were.
Do you know if he made any money betting?
He may have done. A few quid here and there. Naturally, he got to hear things being around the racecourses.
Did he ever win any sizable amount, say, £300?
Not to my knowledge.
Look, Mr. O'Gorman, we were told on good authority that shortly after he began to work for you, McMara got into the money. He used to go around with large sums of cash, sometimes as much as £300 at a time. Have you any idea where he might have got it?
No. No idea at all.
Mr. O'Gorman, if you don't tell me the truth, you'll have to tell it to somebody. Most likely the police.
I've told you, I don't know how he got this money.
But you knew he had it?
Yes.
Good. Good, we're getting somewhere at last. You knew he had large sums. How did you know?
I cashed the checks for him.
I see. Who signed them?
I can't tell you that.
Why not?
I don't know who you are or what authority you have to ask me these questions. A man in my position can't be too careful about things like this, you know.
I'm on your side, Mr. O'Gorman. There won't be any kickbacks. All I want is an answer. Nothing else.
No, I'm sorry. I can't tell you.
Well, there are always a lot of nasty things involved in a killing, O'Gorman. A man would be well advised to keep out of one.
You're not suggesting I'm mixed up in this, are you?
Well, if I were a copper, I might think you were.
But you're not a policeman.
No. But I could keep the coppers off your neck.
How?
Well, sooner or later, I shall have to turn over what I know about this affair to the police. I know some of the boys at the yard. I worked with them when I was over here with the OSS. That could be helpful to you, Mr. O'Gorman.
In what way?
Well, I could go to them and say I got this information from a certain person. He doesn't want any more questions asked. As a favor to me, they'd respect that.
And you wouldn't bring my name into it?
No.
You promise?
Cross my heart.
All right, I'll tell you. Ricky cashed checks with me about twice a month. They were for varying amounts. At first, 150. Later, 300.
Whose checks?
2 different people. One lot was signed by Christopher Hampton, the racehorse owner.
And the other lot by Martin Sorrowby, the newspaper editor. That right?
Yes. Oh, you can see now why I hesitated to tell you. Hampton's an important man on the turf. It wouldn't do me any good to go meddling in his affairs.
Your discretion does you credit. All right, Heather. I think we've got all we came for. Thank you, Mr. O'Gorman, and good night. Now, where's that cabbie? Oh, there he is. Hello. Hello there. Still in the cab?
Yes. Been wrestling with temptation all the while.
Who won?
Oh, I did. Had a couple of near shaves, though. Especially when I heard the crowd shouting 3 dog home. Oh, number 3 trap was always my favourite. Lost 3 of my cabs on that trap, I did. Always very partial to the number 3.
Well, as you've managed to wrest this cab back from the devil, how about taking us to the Valida Hotel?
Okay. I ain't come a minute too soon. If you'd been a bit longer, I'd have been in there, police or no police.
Oh, fog's getting thick again.
They don't have much fog in Ireland.
Oh, Odell, I'm sorry about that, really I am. But you can have your holiday as soon as this is over. The rate things are going now, you might be in Dublin tomorrow evening.
You think it'll be as soon as that, do you?
Well, we've seen O'Gorman and we've got Marilyn Peters. You've seen Hampton and Sorrowby. We've made wonderful progress in 24 hours, haven't we?
We've covered a lot of ground, but that isn't quite the same thing as making progress, is it? After all, we still don't know who killed Ricky or why, do we?
No, I suppose not. Philip?
Hmm?
Why should Hampton and Sorrowby have given Ricky so much money?
Can't you guess?
Perhaps he was working for them, too?
At around $600 a month.
Does seem a bit excessive, doesn't it?
It does. It seems much more like blackmail to me.
Blackmail?
And why not? You said yourself that Ricky was no upright citizen.
Yes, but blackmail...
Hand, please. That's better. Now listen, Angel. We're liable to uncover a lot of dirt as this goes on. It's inevitable. There'll be things that won't make nice hearing. You must try and be impersonal about it.
I know. But he was my brother.
We'll get it over with as soon as possible. When we've got just a little more, I'll go to the cops and hand it all over to them.
Philip, if Ricky had been blackmailing Hampton and Sorrowby, that would give them a motive for killing him, wouldn't it?
It would. A strong motive.
Would you say they were capable of murder?
Angel, anyone's capable of murder given the right amount of pressure. But don't let's try and jump at conclusions. This is a complicated business. There are a lot of confusing things tied up in it. There's the dame in the mink coat. Obviously, she fits in somewhere, or else why should she be trying to bottle up Marilyn? And then, what's Marilyn's angle? Why is she so leery about going to the cops?
Yes, indeed.
You see, everyone's lying, Angel, lying on all cylinders. They always do in a case like this. Most of them lie because they don't want some pet skeleton uncovered by a murder investigation. But there's always one who lies because he wants to beat the hangman. That's the boy or girl we want, and we haven't got a line on him yet.
Well, I'll stop trying to think out the answers. You just tell me what you want me to do.
Well, right now you could turn your head just a little bit to the left.
Hmm?
That's it. Just tilt the chin up a bit further. There. You know, this is the nicest investigation I ever had anything to do with.
Is it?
If I could be sure of getting a client as pretty as you, Heather, once or twice a month, I'd set up as a private dick tomorrow.
I think that's an insult.
Insult?
Yes. Suggesting that there might be enough women in England as pretty as me to keep you going at the rate of 2 a month. Of course there are, but you've no right to say it.
I'm sorry, Angel. It's working with the American Army that made me like this. They don't go in for the subtle approach where women are concerned. Well, here we are. Now for Marilyn Peters. I don't think it'll be too difficult to get her to talk. But I was wrong. It turned out to be impossible to get the truth out of Marilyn. For when we got up to my room, she had gone. Now, Marilyn was so darn scared, she must have had a very strong reason to desert the safety of my hotel room. So I went down to the switchboard to see if I could nose out any information. The operator was a grim-looking blonde with a great deal of eye black, but not much faith in mankind.
Valida Hotel. One moment, please. Did you want something, sir?
Yes, I'm Philip Odell, room 312. I want to know if there have been any calls put through to my room during the last hour.
Telephone messages are obtainable at the reception desk.
I know that, but I haven't been in my room for the past hour.
If the caller left a message, it'll be at the reception desk.
Look, could we forget the reception desk for a moment? When I went out an hour ago, there was someone in my room. She's not there now. What I'm trying to find out is, did anyone call her on the telephone? Do I make myself clear?
Perfectly.
Then maybe you'll be so kind as to tell me.
I can't.
Why not?
Because I've only just come on duty.
There must have been some easier way of finding that out. Who did you relieve? Was it Violet?
If you mean Miss Levine, the answer is yes.
Do you know where she is now?
In the staff dining hall having her supper.
Many thanks.
You're welcome. Valida Hotel. One moment, please.
Oh, Violet. Violet, could I have a word with you for a moment?
Mr. Odell, anything the matter?
I'm sorry to interrupt your supper. I'm trying to find out if there was a telephone call made to my room in the last hour. I asked your charming colleague, but we discovered after a verbal obstacle race that she didn't know.
Oh, yes, Mr. Odell, there was a call. Came through about 15 minutes after you went out with Miss McMara.
Now, who was it from, a man or a woman?
It was a woman's voice.
What did she say?
She asked to be connected with your room. I told her you'd just gone out, and she said it wasn't you she wanted, but Miss Peters, so I put her through.
Well, what did she say to Miss Peters?
I don't know, Mr. Odell. It's my job to connect the caller and then get off the line.
I know, Violet, but what did she say? It's very important. I know you listen in. Come on now, tell me.
Well, she said she was speaking for you and told Miss Peters she was to come round to Sydney Street straight away. Miss Peters asked why, and she told her she'd find out when she got there. She said it was very urgent, and then she rang off. Afterwards, Miss Peters rang down for a cab. That was all.
Thank you, Violet. You're one in a million.
You won't give me away, will you?
No, of course not. I'll recommend to the management that you get a raise.
Whew, this fog is so thick I can hardly see a thing. Now, but this is Sydney Street, all right.
I hope you're right. Now, look, Heather. Here's the plan. They may still be watching Marilyn's house. And if they are, I want to see them at it. I want to get a close look at this dame in the mink coat if I can. So you walk slowly towards the house and keep looking round every few yards.
Mm-hmm.
If they see you, give them a chance to get a good look at your face. Take your time getting to the house.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to follow you up on the other side of the street. And when you get to the house, go up the steps, but don't ring the bell. Wait until I join you. Okay?
Okay.
Good. Then off you go. She walked on slowly, pausing at each lamppost and looking round so that the sickly yellow light showed her face. She'd gone about 20 yards when a man came out of the doorway a little way ahead of me, crossed the street, and fell in behind her. She reached Marilyn's house and went up the steps. The man stopped and drew back into the fog. And then I started to cross the street. Well, I'd gone about 3 paces when I heard the sound of a fast-moving car and was blinded suddenly by a blaze of orange light. Hey, what the...
Philip! Philip, are you all right?
Give me a hand to get up, will you, Angel?
Are you all right?
Yes. Turned my ankle over a bit, that's all. That's okay. I can stand on it. It's all right.
That car was driven straight at you.
I know. Damn nearly hit me, too.
Did you see who was driving it?
No, I didn't have time for anything like that.
Well, I did. It was the woman in the mink coat. I recognized her from Marilyn's description. Oh, she was lovely, all right.
Her habits aren't very lovely. Okay, let's go and see Marilyn.
Oh, good evening, Mrs. Cantaloupe. May we come in?
Oh, it's Miss McMara. Yes, of course. Come along in. Nasty night, isn't it? This fog puts me in mind of a graveyard, if you see what I mean.
It nearly put me into a graveyard. Is, Miss Peters here?
Yes, she came in about an hour ago, she did.
Oh, well, we'll go in then.
I think she has someone with her, a lady.
Oh, did you see this lady?
Yes, wearing a lovely fur coat she was. Think it was mink. It cost a packet, you could see that.
Did she have big blue eyes and black hair?
Yes. Oh, beautiful she was, like a film star.
But she can't be with Miss Peters now.
Why not?
I've just seen her outside in the street.
Oh, I thought I heard the front door go.
Did she arrive with Miss Peters?
Oh, no. She came in about half an hour later. Said Miss Peters was expecting her, so I let her go in.
You, didn't happen to overhear any of their conversation, did you?
I may be a landlady, Mr. Odell, but I'm no eavesdropper.
Of course not, Mrs. Cantaloupe.
Well, I'm glad you've come, Mr. Odell. I'm worried about Miss Peters, really worried.
Oh, why?
She's that cut up over Mr. Ricky, and she's the kind that'd do herself in.
Oh, I don't know, Mrs. Cantaloupe. Suicides aren't very numerous.
Well, I've seen it before, Mr. Odell. Witnessed it with my own 2 eyes. Time I had a place over in Brixton. Young girl, about the same age as Miss Peters, but she went and got herself mixed up with a married man. And one morning we found her in bed with the gas on. Yes, we got gas fires here.
Well, let's go in and see her. Miss Peters? Miss Peters, it's Odell. Let me in.
Philip, you don't think she's...
I don't think anything. I'm going in. Now stand out of the way, Angel. And don't come in after me unless I tell you.
Oh, here. Here, well, what do you think you're doing?
Breaking the door down.
Oh, now look here, you're not going to break down my property.
If I don't do it, the police will. Now get out of the way, will you? Now wait here, both of you. Even though I couldn't see anything in the darkness of that room, I knew what was there. I could feel it through the pores of my skin. I found the light switch and thumbed it down. It was a depressing place, that room of Marilyn Peters. A ground floor front, as the landladies call it. A tall, crumbling room with damp stains everywhere. An ornamental fireplace that wasn't ornamental anymore. And a badly molting glass chandelier. A room for a sordid happening. And there had been a sordid happening here. I looked towards the corner where the low divan bed was. I didn't need to look twice. A dead body is unmistakable if you're used to seeing one. I went out again and pulled the door behind me.
Is she...
Yes.
Oh, I knew it.
No.
I knew it. Just like the young lady in Brixton.
No, Mrs. Cantaloupe, not like the young lady in Brixton. This wasn't suicide.
What? Oh, you mean murder?
Yes.
Oh, but it can't be. It can't. A murder in the house. I'll have to lower my rents. I'll have to close up.
Heather.
Oh.
Come on, Heather. We'll have to go to the police now.
They find the body of Marilyn Peters, Ricky's girlfriend. And this decides Odell that the time has come to make a report to the police. He goes to Scotland Yard.
If you'll wait here, Mr. Odell, the inspector will be up in a minute. He's down in the radio room.
Thanks.
It's nice to see you again, but it's a bit late for making a social call, isn't it? After midnight, you know.
This isn't a social call, Sergeant Layton.
Oh, it wouldn't be another case of international espionage, would it?
Sorry, only a double killing job.
Ah, that. Well, not that it makes any difference to me nowadays. If someone had pinched the House of Commons, I wouldn't get to work on it.
How do you mean?
Well, the inspector does all the work round here. All the brain work, that is. Oh, we've got a new inspector, by the way. A young chap by the name of Rigby. Simon Rigby.
Good man?
College boy.
Oh, I see.
Mr. Odell?
Yes.
I'm Inspector Rigby. You wanted to see me about this McMara case?
That's right.
Well, please sit down.
Thank you.
All right, Sergeant Layton, you can go.
Thank you, sir.
You must be very agitated, Mr. Odell.
Agitated?
Calling at Scotland Yard at this late hour.
Oh, I see. Well, crime like history is often made at night, isn't it?
Perhaps they're the same thing. Crime and history. It depends on your viewpoint. Alexander, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, all history makers, all criminals. Well, what about Ricky McMara?
He was found in the Thames on Thursday.
I know. Cause of death, drowning.
No, murder.
Murder?
Plain, straightforward, bloody murder.
Can you prove it?
I think so. Last night I went to see his girlfriend, a girl called Marilyn Peters. She didn't tell me very much. She was upset, but this morning she came to my hotel and said she was being watched. And she was plenty scared. She had reason. A little less than an hour ago, I had to break down the door of her room. She'd been strangled.
And you think this proves McMara was murdered?
Don't you?
There might be other explanations?
Oh, sure. She might have been knocked off by someone she beat to the Antarctic, or a Sputnik might have lighted on her. Anything might have happened, but for my money, she was rubbed out by the person who killed McMara.
And do you know who that person is?
Well, I can give you a lead. Somewhere in this fog, there's a dame in a mink coat who could tell you plenty about these two killings. She's in her early 30s. She's got big blue peepers and jet black hair. She drives a big car that looks like Buckingham Palace on wheels. You find her, and you may have the murderer.
How do you come to be mixed up in this, Mr. Odell?
I'm a friend of McMara's sister, Heather. She asked me to make some inquiries.
I see.
Yes, and there's a whole lot more to see. This is no backstreet mix-up, Inspector. A couple of eminent citizens are involved. Christopher Hampton, the racehorse owner, and Martin Sowerby, the newspaper editor. Murder in this case moves on thick pile carpet.
Would you care to write out a statement?
Sure. Give me some paper and I'll do it right now.
No, not now. Go home and sleep on it. Come back here at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Look, Inspector, things are moving fast. There isn't time for anyone to sleep on anything. There isn't any time for anyone to sleep.
Do as I say, Mr. Odell. You'll find it'll work out better.
Okay.
This girl, Marilyn Peters, where's her body now?
In a rooming joint in South Kensington, Sydney Street. There's a constable outside the house. I reported to the local station before I came around here.
Good. I'll go along there right away.
Don't you want me to come with you?
No, I don't think so.
I found the body, remember?
I shan't forget that. I shall see you here at 10, then.
Surely.
Oh, there's one other thing, Mr. Odell.
Hmm?
Keep out.
What do you mean?
I can handle this case without the assistance of an amateur.
Okay, driver. Take us along the embankment, will you?
Any particular part of it?
No, just cruise up and down. I want to think.
Think? With a pretty girl like that in the back?
I'd like to brain the guy who started the idea that all cabmen have to be comics.
Well, did you report it?
Yes.
What do they say?
Nothing.
What's the matter? You sound angry.
I am angry, Angel. Boiling, bubbling, blazing angry. I could eat the buttons off this seat.
What happened? Tell me.
Well, there's a new guy in charge of the homicide squad, or whatever they call it in Scotland Yard. A guy by the name of Rigby. A charming character if you happen to like a man with a voice like crackling ice. He told me to keep out. Called me an amateur. Me, an amateur. I was chasing thugs and brigands while he was still chasing a hoop.
Oh, have a cigarette and calm down.
Angel, why is it your cigarettes always taste of perfume?
I work in the perfumery department, remember?
Couldn't manage to work for a distillery for a change, could you?
Oh, the fog's lifting. Oh, doesn't the river look lovely at night? Oh, tell the taxi driver to stop. I'd like to sit here and look at it for a bit.
Driver, stop here, will you? The lady wants to look at the river.
Don't you two ever go to bed?
I know a good answer to that, but in the interest of public decency, I won't utter it.
Hello, Leighton. Everything all right?
Yes, Inspector. Doctor's just finishing his examination.
Would you like to look, Inspector Rigby?
Oh. Thanks, Doctor.
As competent a piece of strangulation as I've ever seen.
She didn't put up much of a struggle by the look of it.
No. No external injuries. Clothes aren't even disarranged.
Odd.
I can't say for certain yet, but my guess is that she died from heart failure.
You mean she was dead while he was strangling her?
Yes. She may have died of fright when he first touched her. Do you want me any more, Inspector?
No, thanks.
Oh, I'd put the time of death between 9:30 and 10:30.
See who that is, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. No. It's the landlady, Inspector, Mrs. Cantaloupe.
Oh, all right, let her in.
Come in, will you?
Well, I'll be off to bed then. Good night, Inspector.
Good night, Doctor. Now, Mrs. Cantaloupe, what do you want?
Is it true she was murdered, Inspector?
Why do you want to know?
Oh, this is my house, sir. Letting rooms is my livelihood, and why'd she have to go and get killed in my house?
Oh, be quiet, woman.
Oh, yes, but it's my room.
When did you last see this girl?
Oh, this evening. She came in at about 9:15. I know it was then because I was listening to a programme on the wireless.
Did she go straight to her room?
Yes, she did.
Anybody call on her?
Yes.
Who was it?
A woman in a mink coat.
Ah. How long did she stay?
I don't rightly know. She let herself out. I heard the door go about 10:15. I know that's right because I was winding up the clock.
When did Mr. Odell come?
About 5 minutes later.
20 past.
Yes. He came with Miss McMara. She's Mr. Ricky's sister. Mr. Ricky and Miss Peters were going together, you know.
I know. And what did Mr. Odell say?
Oh, he asked me a lot of questions. He's always asking questions, says he's a detective.
Then he found this door was locked and broke in, is that right?
Yes.
Did you go in with him?
Oh, no. He told me and Miss McMara to stay outside in the hall. He came in here and closed the door after him, and then he came out and said Miss Peters was dead.
How long was he in here?
Oh, about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. All right, Mrs. Cantaloupe, that'll be all.
Oh, if you could keep it out of the papers, sir. I've got a bit of money put by.
Get out!
Yes.
Have the photographic people been, Leighton?
Yes, sir.
Fingerprints?
Yes. He got 2 good sets on that tumbler beside the bed. One of hers, of course. They're printing the other set.
Good, I'll see them in the morning. All right, Leighton, you take over here. I'm going back to the yard.
Very good, sir.
Oh, and Leighton.
Yes, sir?
Your friend Odell is coming at 10. Arrange to get his fingerprints, will you?
Well, Angel, have you seen enough of this river?
Yes. Oh, I'm getting a bit sleepy.
Good. My arm's away ahead of you. It's been asleep for half an hour. Now we'll get a move on. I've been thinking.
Where are we going?
Milton House.
But isn't that where Christopher Hampton lives?
It is.
What? Are you going to call on him?
I am.
At this hour? It's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning.
Mr. Hampton's got late hours written all over his face.
But didn't Inspector Rigby tell you to lay off?
He did. But who ever heard of an Irishman obeying an order? Driver, Milton House, Ryder Street.
Good. I'm sick of looking at this river.
Is that Milton House?
Yes. Now, Hampton's flat's on the 3rd floor. Do you see any lights?
No, not one. He must have gone bye-byes after all.
I doubt it. Let's take a peek around the back. There's an alleyway just up here. Yes, I thought so. There is a light. Now, let's see. Good, that fire escape connects with the balcony outside his window.
You're not going in that way, are you?
I am.
What's the matter with the front door?
Nothing, except that it'll go bang in my face. Now, listen, Angel. There's something I want you to do. Take a cab and go down to the Press Club.
Where's that?
It's just off Fleet Street. The driver will know it. Ask for a guy called David Vintner.
David Vintner?
He's a newspaper man. He's usually in the club at this time. Tell him you're a friend of mine. And ask him to get you some dope on Martin Sowerby. Where he lives, where he came from, any dirt on him, that sort of stuff.
Okay. Well, here I go. Heather McMara, girl detective.
Hey.
What?
Kiss me.
No, I...
Do as I say.
Oh.
That's better. We'd pass for a courting couple anywhere, provided No one saw the expression on your face.
Stop it, Philip. Let me go.
We're being watched. There's someone in that doorway over there.
I can't see anyone.
Just the same, there's someone there. Now keep still.
My right foot's gone to sleep.
It's all right. He's moving away now.
Who could it be?
I don't know. I don't like it. When I'm being tailed, I'd like to know why.
It might be a peeping Tom.
Don't peeping Toms usually stick around the parks?
Not always.
Of course, it would be worth any peeping Tom's while to follow you off the beaten track, Angel.
Now you're getting maudlin. Oh, he's gone now. What do we do?
You get down to the press club, and I'll go up that fire escape.
Goodbye, Philip. Take care of yourself.
I went up that fire escape and through the French windows that gave on to Christopher Hampton's room. He was sitting in a big saddle-back chair wearing a dressing gown which looked like a painter's palette gone mad. He looked up, went as pale as a man with his coloring ever could, and said...
Oh, the devil! Oh, it's you.
Forgive my intruding on you like this, Mr. Hampton, but I figured your man Parkin would have said you were out if I'd come to the front door.
You're not such a bad detective after all, Mr. Odell. That's exactly what he would have done.
Handy, that fire escape.
Very. I must get it taken away. Found any more murders since I saw you last?
Only one.
One in 24 hours? That's not very good going, is it?
Well, it's enough to keep body and soul together if you work Sundays. Where were you between 9 and 10 this evening?
On the way back from Newmarket?
You didn't go by way of Sydney Street, South Kensington, did you?
No. Why do you ask?
A girl called Marilyn Peters was strangled there this evening.
Really? How unpleasant.
There was. Did you have a nice day in Newmarket?
Very, thank you.
Horses all right?
Perfectly. Would you care for a drink?
I could care for one. Passionately.
Brandy, perhaps?
Brandy, certainly.
Good. I hate to say I told you so, Mr. Odell.
Which means you're going to do it.
I did warn you that the unpleasant things happen in a London fog. Don't you remember?
I remembered it very clearly when I broke down that door and saw that girl lying strangled on her bed.
Here's your drink.
Thank you. Aren't you joining me?
No, I have to take my medicine in a moment.
Oh, yes, of course. The old nerve tonic. How are the nerves coming along?
Oh, quite well, thank you.
They weren't affected by that nasty business in Marilyn Peters' room, were they?
What are you talking about?
Oh, it doesn't matter. I was just trying to get under your guard, but that isn't easy, I see. Cheers.
Cheers. Cigarette?
Thank you. Why were you paying Ricky McMara hush money?
Brandy all right?
First rate. I asked you a question.
Who pays you to ask these questions?
No one. I do it for love.
Of humanity?
No, of a good time. I get one when this case is wound up. I hope.
How'd you like to be paid for a change?
By you?
By me.
Mr. Hampton, I'm not one of these unworldly types that despises dough. I'm very attached to it. Just the same, I prefer it to be fairly clean. Sorry.
This is clean.
What do you want me to do?
Find out who's blackmailing me.
I thought that finished when McMara died.
It didn't. There's someone behind McMara.
What makes you think I could help you?
I like the way you go to work. You're not easily shaken off. You're intelligent, and above all, you're honest. Will you do it?
All right.
Good. I'll write a check.
Oh, that's all right. I'll present the bill when the job's done. I'm not a hand-to-mouth organization yet. That's coming when Inspector Rigby gets me on Dartmoor.
I'd rather pay now. Let's call it a retainer. Here you are. How's this?
But I can't take this.
Why not?
It's too much. It's for £300.
You can always tear it up if you want to back out.
Okay. Now, tell me something more about this blackmail. What's behind it?
It's a long story.
That's all right. There's still plenty left in the brandy bottle.
Oh, help yourself.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm listening.
15 years ago, a man called George Maybrick hanged himself in one of my stables at Rudge.
Rudge? I thought your stables were at Newmarket.
They are now. In those days, I had them in Rudge. My family comes from there. Rudge is in the north, near Lancaster, you know.
I didn't know. You know, this is nice brandy.
Maybrick was my racing manager. Young, keen, efficient. But he had one serious weakness.
Drink?
No. Women.
Oh, dear, dear, dear. We all have our weaknesses, haven't we?
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, Maybrick's weakness was expensive. He stole money from me. I found out and discharged him. That night, he hanged himself.
Unpleasant.
Yes, it was made additionally unpleasant by a crop of rumors that sprang up.
Rumors about the way he died?
Yes. You see, on the day of his death, a much-fancied horse of mine ran badly in an important race. I'd backed another horse, the winner. This leaked out, and people said I'd had my own horse pulled.
And had you?
No, I had not.
Oh. Well,
Well, when Maybrick hanged himself that same night, the rumor went round that I'd killed him to keep his mouth shut about how my horse had been pulled. Of course, it was quite absurd, and the verdict of suicide was brought in at the inquest. But that didn't stop the rumors. And so I left the district to move my stables to Newmarket.
Where does the blackmail come in?
I'm coming to that. About 3 months ago, Ricky McMara came to see me and said a letter had come into his possession. A letter I'd written to Maybrick a few days before he died. It contained some very violent language. In fact, I threatened to kill him.
Was the letter genuine?
I'm afraid so.
And why did you threaten to kill Maybrick?
It was over a girl called Kitty Stapleton, a Rudge girl, and very lovely. I was interested in her, but there were complications.
You mean she preferred Maybrick?
Well, yes.
So you got mad and wrote Maybrick a letter telling him you'd do him in if he didn't lay off. Is that right?
Yes. Somehow McMara got hold of this letter 15 years later. He wanted money. I paid him. I thought it might be very difficult to explain that letter. At first, McMara was satisfied with the money I gave him. But then, one day, he came and said he wanted me to pull the horse I'd entered in the Manchester November Handicap, to dope it. He was particularly insistent that I should dope it.
Why?
Obviously, he wanted to get me warned off. There bound to be an inquiry, and I'd be sunk. He wanted to ruin me, you see.
But surely even McMara had heard the story of the goose and the golden eggs.
Oh, quite. So when he did that, I knew he wasn't working alone. I knew there was someone behind him, someone who didn't want my money, but my ruin.
I see. Well, it makes sense. Have you any idea who that someone might be?
Well, no.
No clue of any kind? I'll need a bit more than this before I can set to work, Mr. Hampton.
Well, this might help. Last night, I got a telephone call. What is it, Parkin?
The telephone, sir.
I can't come. I'm busy. Tell them to ring in the morning.
I think you'd better come, sir.
Why?
It's the lady, sir.
Oh, yes. You'll have to excuse me, Mr. Odell. I'll be back in a moment.
But he wasn't back in a moment. I waited an hour in that room, a very long hour, and it wasn't a room you could relax in, although I'll admit there was plenty of brandy. Finally, I got bored with it and went out into the hall. Parkin, the manservant, was standing there. He gave me that dead look of his and said,
Did you want something, Mr. Odell?
Yes, Mr. Hampton.
He's gone to bed.
But he told me to wait.
He asked me to say he was sorry, sir, but he'd see you tomorrow.
Why didn't you tell me that before?
I was detained.
I see. Well, there doesn't seem anything left for me but to go, does there?
No, Mr. Odell, there doesn't.
Who pays your wages, Parkin?
My wages, sir?
Or do you call it your stipend?
Mr. Hampton pays me. Why do you ask?
I wondered if someone else paid you to shut him up when he was on the point of giving something away, opening his mouth too wide, you know.
I don't think I understand you, sir.
Never mind. Sometimes I don't think I understand myself. Oh, Parkin,
Yes, sir?
Do you know a woman who wears a mink coat, in her early 30s, dark, worth looking at, drives a big car?
No, Mr. Odell, I don't.
As if you'd tell me. Well, I came down into the street and walked up into Piccadilly. Then I wandered along slowly, trying to get things straightened out in my mind. There was no sign of the man in the alleyway, whoever he was. I must have wandered a long time, because when I next took any interest in my surroundings, I was away down near Westminster Bridge, with the big yellow face of Big Ben telling me it was 1:30 in the morning, and time for Heather to have got back from Fleet Street. So I ducked into a telephone kiosk to call her.
Hello?
Heather?
Is that you, Philip?
It is. Did you get the dope?
I did.
Good girl.
Martin Sowerby began his career on a provincial weekly in Lancashire. I've got the name of the town written down. Hold on a minute and I'll get it.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I think I know the name. Is it Rudge?
Yes. How did you know?
And did he leave Rudge 15 years ago?
Yes.
In a hurry?
Yes, but how on earth did you...
Fine. It's all fitting together like a dressed-up dowager. Heather, you're wonderful. Where does Sowerby live?
In Hampstead. Thackeray Lodge. That's in Heath Grove.
Bless you, Angel. I'll call you in the morning.
But what are you going to do now?
I'm going to Thackeray Lodge.
At this hour?
Well, this may be the last chance I'll get. Remember, I have a date at the yard at 10. And if I'm late, Rigby might give me a pressing invitation to stay a year or two. Bye, Angel.
This is it, sir. Heath Grove.
Thanks.
What number did you want?
It doesn't matter. I'll walk from here.
It's a long road, you know.
I'm a long walker. How much do I owe you?
30 bob.
That's very generous, isn't it? Generous to you.
Oh, it's very late, sir. I won't get another fare up here.
Isn't Hampstead Heath the place where the highwaymen used to hang out?
I believe so, sir.
Times haven't changed much, have they? Well, here's 35 bob. Give Black Bess a feed of hay. The driver was right. Heath Grove was a long road. It was also very full of darkness and fog. The fog had come down again. I'd gone a couple of 100 yards when I heard a woman's voice. It was the kind of voice the sirens must have used to lure those impressionable sailors onto the rocks.
Mr. Odell,
Yes? Who are you?
turn your torch to the right and you'll see. Well, recognize me?
Ah, the mink coat.
Charming description. The mink coat. It makes me sound rare and exclusive. I like it.
Oh, I'm glad you like it.
Turn the torch on your own face now.
Why?
I want to see what you look like. I haven't had an opportunity to see you properly yet.
You don't give yourself much of a chance, do you? Rushing at me in that big car.
Turn the torch, Mr. Odell. You've got a good face. There's character there. And humor. I approve of it. Put the torch out.
Can't I look at you some more? I'd like to.
Put it out.
Certainly. Did my eyes deceive me, or did I really see someone move right behind you?
You did.
Something big?
Something very big. His name is Jay. He used to be a prize fighter.
Really?
A good one.
Oh, I'm sure. You only have things about you that are good, don't you? Good minks, good cars, good prize fighters. You've got style, Miss, or is it Mrs.?
Don't you know?
No, I've always talked to myself about you as mink coat.
Go on doing that, Mr. Odell. It'll be simpler.
Oh, I'm glad we're going to have something simple. It'll make a nice change. Things have been much too complicated to date. I'm almost out of breath keeping up with them.
You've done very well. Too well.
Well, I wouldn't say that. There's still a lot I don't know. Where you fit in, for instance. You've got some connection with McMara's death and with Marilyn Peters. That I do know.
Do you?
You've also got some connection with the blackmailing of Christopher Hampton.
How do you know that?
That mink coat was a guess. Now, what about Martin Sowerby? Where does he tie in?
Try another guess.
Oh, I hate guessing. It's so unprofessional. I was on my way to see Sowerby when you stopped me.
I know.
Why did you stop me, by the way?
I wanted to talk to you.
Could you wait until I've seen Sowerby?
Sorry. Well, late as it is.
Oh, we're going somewhere then? Hmm?
We are. We're going for a drive.
In your big car?
In my big car.
Sorry. I don't like that car. It has nasty habits. I've got big bruises all down one side to prove it.
You'd better come, Mr. Odell.
No, thanks. I'm going to see Sowerby.
Jay.
Now, look, we don't have to have any rough stuff, do we? After all, we're...
All right, Jay. Put him in the back.
Is this the place, Leighton?
Yes, Inspector. The Leader Hotel.
Expensive place. Does himself well, eh?
Odell loves his comfort.
Well, disappearing at this point isn't going to add to his comfort. He's going to find himself on the wrong end of a manhunt. Come on, we'll go in and talk to someone. Are you the manager?
The under-manager.
Oh. Well, I suppose you'll do.
Thank you so much.
I'm Inspector Rigby of Scotland Yard.
Oh.
Yes, I thought you wouldn't like that. There's a man called Odell staying here, Philip Odell.
That's right. He arrived on Friday.
I want to ask a few questions. Could we go somewhere out of this hubbub?
Of course. This way, please.
Has Odell had any callers since he's been here?
Only two. Both young women.
Who were they?
A Miss McMara and a Miss Peters.
Miss Peters? Slender girl with long dark hair?
That is she.
I see. I rang your switchboard 10 minutes ago and they said Odell wasn't in. Has he come in since then?
No.
Are you sure?
Of course.
Couldn't he have come in without your knowing?
No, he could not.
You must have as many eyes as a fly.
I have. That's why I'm the under-manager.
The manager must be something.
Be quiet, Leighton. When was Odell last in this hotel?
He went out with Miss McMara shortly after 9 last night. He hasn't been back since.
Right. Well, I'm sending a man up to his room. You'll give him every facility.
I suppose you have a search warrant.
Naturally. Here you are.
Oh, I see.
Come along, Leighton. We're finished here.
Inspector.
Well?
Is anything wrong?
You don't suppose I'd be here if everything was all right, do you? Now, Leighton, go and tell Bodley to search Odell's room. I want all papers and letters brought to me.
Yes, Inspector.
Post Stevenson in the lobby. He's to bring Odell straight to the yard if he comes back to the hotel. Meanwhile, I'm going to have a word with Miss McMara.
Yes, but you're on the wrong track, Inspector. Odell's all right. He's a friend of mine.
That's no recommendation. Do as I say.
Yes, sir. Well, why don't you take a day off?
Did you say anything, Leighton?
No, sir.
I say, where can I find Miss Heather McMara?
She's in charge of the perfumery department, first on the right.
Miss McMara?
Yes?
I'm Inspector Rigby of Scotland Yard.
Oh, yes. I've heard about you.
I want to ask you a few questions.
Come in here. We shan't be disturbed.
Sit down, Miss McMara. There's no need to be alarmed.
Oh, I'm not alarmed.
Oh. A cigarette?
Thanks.
How long have you known Philip Odell?
About 4 years.
Know him well?
What do you mean by that?
Well, well. Never mind. When did you see him last?
Just after 1 o'clock this morning. Oh, we had a hectic time last night.
So I understand. You were with him when he discovered the body of Marilyn Peters, weren't you?
Yes.
Were you actually in the room?
No. Odell made me wait outside. He's a considerate man.
So he was alone when he discovered the body?
Yes.
How long was he in the room?
Oh, about 5 minutes, I should say.
5 minutes, eh?
What are you driving at, Inspector?
After Odell reported the discovery of the body to me, I went round to Sydney Street. In the dead girl's room, I found a tumbler beside the bed. There were 2 sets of fingerprints on it.
You're not suggesting that Philip killed Marilyn Peters, are you?
I'm suggesting nothing. I'm making an investigation. I want these points cleared up. I want to talk to Odell. He was supposed to have come to the yard at 10 o'clock this morning. It's now past midday.
I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I don't know where he is. promised to ring me this morning, but he didn't.
I understand you've telephoned his hotel several times this morning.
Yes, I have.
Why?
I wanted to speak to him.
What about?
Personal matters.
I want a proper answer, Miss McMara.
Well, that is a proper answer. Haven't you ever been rung up by a girl?
What's that got to do with it?
Well, if you had, you'd know what I meant by personal matters.
This is a police matter, Miss McMara. But that'll be all for the moment.
Well, while Inspector Rigby was going around dispensing his own particular brand of charm, I was waking up in one of the ugliest rooms I've ever seen. It was small and glaringly white. There was one window high up on the wall and covered with strong iron mesh. They didn't intend anyone to get out that way, or through the door, for that matter. It was reinforced with steel bands, and in the upper panel there was a small observation window. A nice, friendly little room. There was no furniture apart from a metal cabinet in dull green and a narrow hospital bed. I was in the bed. I was wearing a pair of pajamas which felt as if they'd been run up from sackcloth that had been treated with mashed nails. I was wondering who had gone to such pains to make me comfortable when I heard the door being unlocked.
Oh, you're awake, are you?
You could call it that. But any resemblance between my present condition and human life is, I feel, purely coincidental.
You talk too much.
I know. How did I manage to talk my way into this bed of roses?
You're sick.
You're telling me. Keep still, will you?
I ain't moving.
Could I have a drink of water?
Sure. Yeah. What's the matter?
I can't sit up.
I could have told you that, matey. Here, let me hold your head up for you. Okay.
Okay.
Now then, drink.
Oh, he's come round then.
Yeah, just watering him.
All right, you can go. I want to talk to him.
Guy.
Well, how do you feel, Mr. Odell?
It's the lady in mink. Been around any more killings since I saw you last?
I asked how you were feeling.
Oh, I feel wonderful. Wonderful. My head feels like an orange that's been run over by a bus.
And that's the morphia. You'll feel better in a minute.
Morphia, huh?
You've been very ill, Mr. Odell.
Really? What happened?
Well, we were talking on Hampstead Heath.
Oh, yes, I remember. I was on my way to see Martin Sorrowby when you popped up out of the darkness. What happened next?
Suddenly, without warning, you collapsed.
Not very complimentary to your powers of conversation. Was I drunk?
I don't know. It happened so suddenly.
Without warning, you say?
Yes, there was no apparent reason for it.
I suppose your pugilist whacking me with a blackjack had nothing to do with it.
My pugilist?
Don't you remember?
I think you must have been dreaming, Mr. Odell.
I see. Your story is that we were having a chat about the international situation when I heeled over suddenly and passed out cold. Is that it?
That's right. Then I got you into my car and brought you here.
And where's here?
A private nursing home.
Private nursing home, huh? I think it looks more like Dartmoor. Who runs this nursing home?
A friend of mine.
Consequently, I get the best of everything. A room like a dungeon and a pair of pajamas which take my top skin off. And lots of lovely morphia. You certainly know how to look after your friends.
I'm not sure you are one of my friends.
Oh, no, don't tell me I've been deluding myself. What about the time you threw that heavy motor car at me? Didn't that mean you cared?
Would you like a cigarette?
Thanks. I think I've just enough strength left to draw it. Once or maybe twice. Well, why don't you sit down?
There isn't a chair.
Well, sit on the bed. I'm too weak to bite.
All right.
You know, you make a nice-looking sick room visitor. Pity you didn't bring some grapes.
Oh, I've brought something better than grapes.
A bottle of scotch?
No, a checkbook.
My favorite form of reading matter.
I thought you looked like a man who loves money.
I adore it, if it's built on portly lines.
Is £1,000 portly enough?
Could be. What do I have to do to get it?
Keep your mouth shut.
Oh, no. That's difficult. As an Irishman, I have a natural love of conversation.
Well, if you could curb it the next time you see a policeman, the 1,000's yours.
You know, I'm not feeling very bright. What is it I'm supposed not to discuss with a cop?
What you know about me.
But I don't know anything about you. I don't even know your name.
You know I knew Ricky McMara.
Oh, I know that, yes. I know he was scared silly of you.
You also know I visited Marilyn Peters just before she died.
Death seems to follow swift on your comings and goings, doesn't it?
Now, let's get melodramatic, Mr. Odell. This is a business talk.
Oh, I don't like that.
Don't like what?
Talking business to someone as lovely as you. Something vaguely indecent about that.
A pretty speech.
Oh, I could do a whole lot better if I wasn't wearing these pajamas.
Yes, I believe you could. What's your first name?
Philip.
Philip.
What's your name?
I'll write that on a check.
Me, one-track mind. I seem fated to attract women with minds like that. May I ask a question?
If you like.
What happens if I don't take the 1,000?
Well, you've been behaving in a very queer way. The doctor would be well within his right if he signed a certificate saying you should be kept under restraint.
You mean saying I'm crazy?
Something like that.
That leaves me in a nasty spot, doesn't it? But if I do take the 1,000, what guarantee have you got that I don't go right out and sing to the coppers?
2 seats have been booked on the evening plane to Dublin. An attendant would escort you.
The attendant wouldn't be you, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
In that case, no soap. The deal's off.
You're not as intelligent as I thought, Mr. Odell.
I know. I'm always an acute disappointment to my nearest and dearest.
I thought I'd be able to appeal to your reason.
Well, try my emotions. That might work.
What do you mean?
Well, just try being kind to me. You know, just a little tenderness.
Don't be funny.
No, I'm not being that. I'm like the blonde who takes a mink. She doesn't like it to be said she's being bought. She prefers that to be understood. You should know that. You've got a mink.
That wasn't a pretty speech, Mr. Odell.
No, but it got under your skin, and that's a good sign.
I don't understand.
Well, sit a little closer for a start. That's better. Now, try giving me a kiss.
No.
Why not? A few women have done it and lived to tell the tale.
What good would it do if I kissed you?
I don't know. Let's try and see.
Well, all right.
Did it do any good?
I thought you were the one we were trying to do good to.
Well, I take some little time to warm up to it. Let's have another go. You must want my silence very badly.
I do.
What for? To avoid being arrested for murder. Did I say something funny?
Oh, no. No, you kissed me and then accused me of murder.
I'm distressingly earthy, I'm afraid. But I might do a deal with you, you know. It's only that I want to know a few things first. I'd like to know what your connection with Ricky McMara was. Now, he was a pretty average piece of riffraff by all accounts. It doesn't go with a woman of your type.
You're not suggesting that I had an affair with him, are you?
Well, it might simplify things if you had. Bang, in the middle of the affair, you find out he's cozy with Marilyn Peters, as her landlady put it. You push him into the river, and later you close her account. Jealous woman, double killings, makes daylight.
You're wrong. I don't go in for men like McMara. What are you grinning at?
If I know anything about women, I'd say you've just admitted to an affair with McMara.
How?
Well, someone once told me that love, passion, whatever you call it, turns to revulsion very easily. And you registered plenty of revulsion when I suggested that you and Ricky McMara...
It isn't true.
All right, it isn't true. What are you going to do now?
I'm going to leave you to think over my proposition. You take the 1,000 and the plane to Ireland, and you go free. If you don't, you stay here. Your next injection's in an hour's time.
You wouldn't be willing to spend that hour with me?
No.
Why not?
Oh, you know all about love, passion, whatever you call it. Work it out.
Well, after she'd gone, I lay and looked at the ceiling and thought about her. It was interesting, very interesting. Especially her reactions to my kissing her. I'd done that firstly because, well, it was nice to do it, and secondly because I wanted to know more about her. You see, I've got a theory that the best way to know anything about a beautiful woman is to make love to her. And I learned plenty about the lady in Mink during those 2 kisses. Plenty. I began to get drowsy again, and soon I was drifting down into sleep. But while I was doing so, 2 people were getting anxious about me, for entirely different reasons. Heather McMara was anxious because she was a nice person and felt responsible for getting me into this mess in the first place. And Inspector Rigby. He was anxious, too. Not because he was a nice person, but because he wanted to get me even deeper into the mess. Well, Heather was the first to make a move.
Come in.
Good morning, Mr. Sowerby. It was nice of you to see me.
Oh, come in and sit down, Miss McMara.
It's quite a walk from that door, isn't it?
That's what your friend Odell said when he came here.
He came to see you last night, didn't he?
No, he didn't.
But he said he was going to.
Well, he didn't. Has anything happened to him?
He's disappeared. Oh, something must have happened to him. He wouldn't have gone off without a word.
Well, I can't help you, I'm afraid.
Oh? I was sure you would be able to help me.
Why?
Odell said you know more about my brother's death than you care to say.
Odell talks nonsense.
Oh, no, he doesn't.
Are you being a detective now, Miss McMara?
Odell's a friend of mine. I want to know what's happened to him, and I'm going to find out. Good morning.
Just a moment.
Well?
Tell me, did you know anything about your brother's affairs?
Very little. I only saw him about once a year.
You don't know who his friends were?
No. Except that they weren't very good ones. They got him into a lot of trouble. Why do you ask?
Oh, no particular reason. I heard about his death.
You knew him then?
Oh, very slightly. I met him professionally.
Oh. I didn't know he ever had anything to do with newspapers.
He sold me some information.
I see. Well, that's something. Perhaps I'm not such a bad detective after all. Goodbye, Mr. Sowerby.
Is Mr. Hampton at home?
Have you an appointment?
I'm Inspector Rigby of Scotland Yard.
Oh. Come in, sir.
I won't keep him long.
I'll tell him you're here, sir.
Expensive-looking place. This bloke must have money.
He's one of the largest racehorse owners in England.
Might give us a few tips.
Oh, really, Leighton?
Mr. Hampton will see you now, sir.
Come in, Inspector. Sorry I'm still in my dressing gown. I haven't been at all well today. Parkin, fetch some drinks.
Yes, sir.
Sit down, gentlemen. Pull up to the fire.
This is my assistant, Sergeant Leighton. He and I are making an investigation together.
Oh, yes?
We're looking for a man called Odell. Philip Odell.
Philip Odell. Elusive fellow.
The drinks, sir.
Over here by the fire, Parkin. Thank you. Now, gentlemen, what will you take?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Sergeant?
Oh, well, I'll have a... No, thank you, sir. Not at the moment.
No? No. Well, I think I'll have a drop of brandy. Strictly against doctor's orders. But after all, one pays a doctor, so one can go against his orders. Besides, it's only my nerves. A drop of spirit can't hurt them. That's better. Now, Inspector, You're looking for Philip Odell, hmm?
Yes. He came here to see you last night, didn't he?
He did. How do you know?
I had a man following him. Unfortunately, that man lost Odell when he left here. He hasn't been seen since.
Oh, well, perhaps he lost himself. Odell didn't know his way about London very well, especially in a fog.
What did he come to see you about, Mr. Hampton?
Oh, nothing much.
It must have been fairly important.
Why?
He came up the fire escape instead of coming to the front door.
Mr. Odell is a resourceful young man, Inspector. He thought I'd be out if he came to the front door.
Well, having forced himself on you, what did he talk about? Now, come along, Mr. Hampton, please. What did he talk about?
A man called Ricky McMara. He was drowned last Thursday.
I know. I'm investigating his death, and Marilyn Peters as well.
In that case, you probably know about McMara's diary.
No, I don't. What about it?
Odell found it in Marilyn Peters' room. It had my name in it. I told him the reason why.
What was the reason?
McMara was blackmailing me.
Blackmailing you, eh? How?
He got hold of a letter of mine which connected me with a rather embarrassing affair. I didn't want the letter shown in certain quarters, so I gave McMara money. Of course, he didn't hand over the letter.
No, they never do.
But McMara wasn't the principal in the affair. After he was drowned, the blackmailing still went on.
How?
I got telephone calls. A woman's voice. I had one this morning.
I see. You ought to have reported this, Mr. Hampton. The blackmail may be connected with McMara's death.
Yes, I see that, but I'm afraid one doesn't always do what is sensible, Inspector.
Quite. Well, now, to get back to Odell. He came here last night to ask you why McMara was blackmailing you. Is that right?
Yes.
What did you say to that?
Nothing. I asked him to help me find out who's doing the blackmailing, now McMara's dead.
Did he agree?
He did. I gave him £300 on account.
Then he went away?
Yes.
Did he say where he was going?
No, I wasn't here when he left.
Oh?
Well, you see, I got one of these wretched nervous exhaustion fits in the middle of our talk and had to go to bed. Parkin, my man, let him out.
Oh, we'll ask Parkin if Odell mentioned anything to him that could give us a lead.
I'll ring for him.
No, don't do that. We're going now. When you're feeling a little better, Mr. Hampton, I'd like you to come down to the yard.
Very well.
I'd like you to tell me a little more about the blackmailing.
I'll come tomorrow morning, if that's all right.
Yes, that'll do splendidly. Good afternoon, Mr. Hampton.
Good afternoon.
Well, Inspector, what do you make of that?
A lot. It gives us an entirely new slant on Odell's part in all this.
Does it?
McMara had a letter which he knew Hampton would pay for. Heather McMara is Ricky's sister. Odell is her boyfriend. You get the connection?
You think all three of them were in the blackmail?
It seems likely. McMara's got out of the way, yet the blackmailing goes on. Perhaps the letter's still in the family. And remember, it was a woman's voice on the telephone, asking Hampton for more money.
But why should Odell and the McMara girl get mixed up in something like that? Neither of them's hard up.
One thing I've learned, Leighton, no one ever has enough money.
Where'd you learn that? Police college?
No, reading the newspapers.
You ought to have read a bit more, sir.
Why?
And you'd know that men of Odell's type aren't blackmailers.
Anyone is liable to be a blackmailer, Leighton. Anyone.
Well, while Inspector Rigby was painfully building his way up to the conclusion that I was a blackmailer, I was still lying in that narrow bed. It was getting on time for my next injection. I was feeling a little stronger now, almost strong enough to lift a matchbox, so I thought I'd have a whack at something really difficult, like sitting upright. I made it in two, and then I got my feet on the floor. Okay, Odell. You're tough, aren't you? 6 foot of solid man. You take a smack on the bean with a blackjack, you take a packet of dope being shot into you and still keep your eyes open. Okay. Now let's see you do something really tough. Stand on your feet. Oh. I said your feet, not your knees. Come on. Let's have another whack. Fine. Now, do you think you can walk? You can? Okay. Let's go and look inside that cabinet. Why, Odell, you are wonderful. Now, what have we here? Your clothes. That's a break. And my torch. Make a handy weapon. Uh-oh. Here comes the injection. Back in the bed, quick.
You awake?
Sure.
Feel okay?
Better than you'd believe.
We'll soon fix that. Time for your injection.
Who gives it?
I do.
You a qualified doctor?
Oh, sure. College man, me.
I could tell that from the way you talked.
You know, don't let's be funny. Give us your arm.
You know, the police aren't going to like this when they hear about me being detained here and shot full of dope.
No?
No.
Hey, what makes you think they're going to hear about it?
This! And here's another for the pinpricks. Goodbye, Jay. See you in college. Well, I struggled into my clothes and was out of that cell. But I still had to get out of the house. Offing Jay with my torch and dressing had used up my slender reserves of strength. I leaned against the wall in the corridor, and my brain was going around like a crazy moth. My knees felt like the inside of a watermelon. Oh, I was in great shape to fight my way out. But I was free. Free to walk among men. My head high and coins jingling in my pocket. Yeah, free.
Attention. Wanted, Philip Odell. Height 6 feet, hair brown, eyes grey. Wearing a blue serge suit, white shirt, mulberry tie. Last seen on the night of the 27th in the vicinity of Hampstead Heath. Believed unarmed, but capable of violence.
I stood there leaning against the wall, trying to work up enough strength to walk away down the corridor. The morphia and the effort of knocking out Jay had weakened me so much that all I wanted to do was to lie down and sleep for a month. Well, after a while, I felt strong enough to give an imitation of a man walking, and I fetched up hard against a window at the end of the corridor. I looked out. It was one floor up, but a big enough drop. Suddenly, I heard a murmur of voices coming nearer. There was nothing else for it. I pulled up the window, and I fell through. I dropped face downwards into a laurel bush. I struggled out and tottered off down a wet gravel drive. It was raining now, a soft, fine drizzle. I landed up at some somber-looking wrought-iron gates and stepped out into a dark, tree-lined avenue. I heard footsteps coming towards me through the gloom. Hello. Who are you?
I want a postman. Do you want anything?
Yes. Tell me, what day is this?
Friday, the 8th.
Friday?
Anything wrong with that?
A heck of a lot. I've just lost 2 days. Imagine 2 whole days carved out of my life, and I'll never know what happened to them. Terrifying, isn't it?
Are you all right, mate?
Oh, sure. Sure. Full of vitamins. Who'd you say you were?
The postman.
Oh, postman. Where am I?
Limewood Avenue.
Where's that?
Blackheath. The heath's at the end of the road there.
Is that far from Piccadilly?
8 or 9 miles. You can get a 53 bus on the heath.
Okay. Thanks. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes?
You know all the houses in this road, don't you?
Of course, sir. I've been delivering around here for 5 years.
What's the name of that one there? There's no name on the gates.
It's called Glendale. It's a private asylum for loonies, you know.
Do you know who runs it?
Name of Frey. Dr. Alexander Frey.
Dr. Alexander Frey.
He's got a place in Wimpole Street, too.
Oh, good. That makes it a whole lot easier, I don't think. Good night.
Good night. Now, I wonder... Perhaps he's an escaped loony. You read about them and what capers they got up to. Best go in and report it.
I went down the avenue and onto the heath. Reached the bus stop and sat down on the pavement. My legs had given out again. The heath was deserted. Nothing in sight, neither man, beast, nor machine. And then, out of the wet gloom came a familiar voice.
Mr. Odell, what do you think you're doing?
Sitting on the pavement?
You're ill. You're in no state to be out.
You think I'd be better in your nursing home?
Of course, you must come back at once.
No, thanks.
No, please.
You're pleading with me now, eh? The beautiful lady in mink asks a favor. It's a touching sight, but the answer is no.
You're delirious.
Sure I am. I'm seeing pink elephants. I'm seeing rainbows. What else do you expect when you fill me up with morphine?
Oh, Mr. Odell, please be sensible.
Call me Philip.
Philip, please be sensible.
You wouldn't care to sit down beside me, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
You see nothing romantic in sitting on a pavement in the rain? You're a big disappointment to me. You're much too conventional.
Will you be sensible?
Well, if that means going back to your place, no.
What are you going to do?
Get on the next 53 bus that shows its face.
And then?
I haven't got that far yet.
Now look, Mr. Odell, I can make you come with me.
How? Don't tell me Jay's recovered.
He has. He's tough, too, you know. I've only got to call and he'll come.
Okay. Go ahead and call. See if I care. What's the matter? Losing your nerve?
No. I just don't want you to be hurt anymore.
Why not?
I like you.
Odd way you have of showing it. Sticking needles in me, trying to run me over in your big car. I'd hate to think what you'd do if you got really crazy about me.
You're a nice person, much too nice to be mixed up in all this. Why don't you take my offer? Take the £1,000 and go to Ireland.
No.
Why not?
I was hired by someone to work on this case.
Oh? Who?
A guy called Christopher Hampton. Know him?
Yes, I know him.
Don't want to let him down.
Christopher Hampton's let a lot of people down in his time. Wouldn't hurt him if someone did it to him for a change.
Just the same, I'm not going to do it. He's in pretty bad shape. His nerves are all shot to pieces. He trusts me, which is good. And he's prepared to pay, which is better.
I'm prepared to pay, too.
But he came first. There aren't any privileged classes, you know, where my services are concerned.
All right, if that's the way you want it. Jay! Jay!
I didn't wait to see Jay. He was much too slick with the blackjack to make him good company. I dived off into the darkness. It was rough going in that heath, but somehow I managed to keep going until I figured I'd given them the slip. I saw some lights ahead, and I made for them. I'd gone a few yards, and then the ground seemed to give way, and I sank down into a lot of bottomless darkness.
Yes? What is it?
Miss McMara to see Inspector Rigby.
Oh, come in, Miss McMara.
Oh, thank you.
Inspector Rigby's out just at the moment. I'm Sergeant Layton, his assistant.
Sergeant, is there any news of Philip Odell? Have you found him yet?
No, I'm afraid we haven't. The inspector put out a general call for him 24 hours ago, but there's been no result.
General call? Does that mean that he's going to be arrested?
Well, I don't know that it means that exactly, Miss
Well,
McMara.
what?
He promised to give the inspector some information about your brother's death, but he didn't show up at the arranged time. The inspector just wants to be sure that it won't happen again.
Then he is going to be arrested.
Well, yes, he is.
But Philip hasn't done anything wrong. It isn't a crime to make inquiries about a murder, is it?
According to Inspector Rigby, it is. Oh, this is Miss McMara, Inspector.
We have met. Is there anything I can do for you, Miss McMara?
I wanted to see you about Odell.
Oh?
Oh, well, sir, I've got one or two things to do. I'll be in the outer office.
Do you know where Odell is, Miss McMara?
No, I don't. But something must have happened to him.
Why do you say that?
Well, he wouldn't go and disappear of his own free will, would he?
I don't know. He might.
Are you really going to arrest him?
Possibly.
But on what charge?
I want him to explain a £300 cheque he got from Christopher Hampton.
£300 cheque?
Yes. Your brother was accustomed to receive money from Christopher Hampton. £300 at a time.
Well?
According to Mr. Hampton, the blackmail didn't finish when your brother was killed.
Oh, but that's ridiculous. Odell isn't a blackmailer.
We shall know that when we find him.
Well, what steps are you taking to find him?
Look, I'm entrusted with the investigation of this case,
I know,
and I'm
but
not answerable to a member of the public while I'm handling it. Now, if you'll excuse me...
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interfere. But I'm so worried about Odell.
I dare say, but your emotional state is no affair of mine.
You're not very friendly, are you?
Miss McMara, exactly what is it you're trying to do?
I want you to help me.
How?
Well, I need advice. There isn't anyone I can turn to.
If I give you some advice, will you take it?
Oh, of course.
Then go home and stay there. Well, Leighton, what is it?
There's a sergeant from our division downstairs.
What does he want?
He's got Odell.
Splendid. Where did they find him?
On Blackheath. He was found lying in a hollow.
Can he walk?
Yes, but he's in a pretty bad way.
Send him up.
Yes, but...
But what?
Well, go easy with him, Inspector. He's had a bad time by the look of it.
Send him up.
Yes, sir.
Inspector, leave him alone for the present, please. I know he hasn't done anything wrong. He can explain that cheque. I'm sure he can.
He'll have every chance to do it.
Yes, but he's ill, Inspector. You heard what the sergeant said. Oh, let me take him away and look after him. When he's better, I'll bring him here, and then you can...
Ah, Mr. Odell, at last.
Philip!
Late for our appointment, I'm afraid.
Yes, 2 days late.
Philip! Oh, he's fainted. Oh, Philip. Oh, dear, doesn't he look dreadful? Blood all over his face.
Loosen his collar. I'll fetch a doctor.
Philip. Darling. Philip. This is Heather.
Hello, Angel. Nice to see you again.
Oh.
You keep bad company, don't you?
What do you mean?
Rigby.
I see.
Here he is, Doctor.
Now, miss, if you'll stand aside, please. Thank you.
Let's get his jacket off.
Yes, I see. Who is this man?
His name's Philip Odell.
What's the matter with him, Doctor?
He's full of narcotics. Just look at his right forearm.
Looks as if someone's been using it as a pincushion.
Did you say he walked into this office, Inspector?
Yes, he came in and pitched flat on his face.
I don't know how he could have stood up, let alone walked.
He's very tough.
He must be.
Will he be ready for questioning soon?
Good heavens, no. Can't you see the state he's in, man?
But I've got to get on with this case. I've been held up for 2 days trying to find him. I must have his statement.
Well, he's not fit to make a statement and won't be for at least 12 hours. He ought to be got to bed immediately. Is there anyone to look after him?
Yes, Doctor. He can come to my flat. It's just off Sloane Street.
Have you any objection to that, Inspector?
Well, I don't know.
You'll get a much better statement from him if he's looked after sympathetically.
Well, all right. Give your address and telephone number to Sergeant Leighton, Miss McMara.
Oh, thank you, Inspector.
Well, have they gone?
Yes, sir. I want to thank you, Inspector.
What for?
Letting Odell go with it go. It was really nice of you.
Wise of me, you mean?
How would that be, sir?
They may make a move which will tell me what I want to know. I've arranged to have 2 men watching her flat night and day, and I've arranged to have her telephone tapped. All right, Leighton, you can go.
Thank you, sir.
I woke up next morning smothered in hot water bottles. There was one on my chest, another on my neck, and 2 against my feet. There were several more littered about the bed, lending sympathetic support. Evidently, Heather's idea of sick nursing was that you should treat the patient like an orchid. Well, I fought my way out from under all this warm rubber and took stock. I felt much more like a human being, for one thing, and for another, I was hungry. Heather seemed to sense this because she came in with a tray of toast and hot coffee. She was wearing a bright check apron and a stern expression on her face. She was being a nurse, and no nonsense.
Oh, you're awake. Oh, no. No, you mustn't sit up by yourself. I'll help you.
Thanks.
There. Now, a few more cushions for your back. There now. Now, here's your breakfast.
Could I have a cigarette first?
No. You're to eat your breakfast, and then I'm going to take your temperature, and then you'll go back to sleep again. Well, aren't you going to tell me?
Tell you what, Angel?
What happened after you left me the other night?
I went on out to Hampstead to see Sowerby. I left the car at the end of the road and walked up. And on the way, I was stopped.
By who? I mean, by whom?
The lady in mink.
No.
Yes. Her escort whacked me hard with a blackjack, and I woke up in a private nut house and found I'd been shot full of morphia. Kept out for 2 days.
Oh.
Then she came in and offered me £1,000 to go to Ireland and keep my mouth shut.
Well.
Later on, I managed to fall out of a window. A cop found me on Blackheath, and the rest you know.
Philip, does this mean the lady in mink killed Ricky and Marilyn Peters?
Well, I don't know. It may do, but it's not who did it that interests me so much, Heather. It's why it was done.
How do you mean?
Well, everyone connected with this case is trying to hide up something. Everyone's being something they're not. Christopher Hampton, an outdoor type, yet he's behaving like a pale neurotic. Martin Sowerby, the editor of an important paper, behaving like the little guy in the bowler hat with all the world on his neck. And the lady in mink, with all the glamour that ever came out of Bond Street, going on like a political agitator. Whoever you touch this case, Heather, wherever you touch it, it's phony. I want to find out why. If it leads to meet the killer, fine. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
You sure?
All the glamour and seductiveness that ever came out of Bond Street. That woman must have made a big impression on you.
Oh, well, so you know.
Were you alone with her?
As a matter of fact, yes, I was.
Where?
Well, in this bed, this sort of cell I was in.
Oh, I see. You carried on a conversation with her in a bedroom, did you?
Yes, but,
Of course. You kissed her.
Look, Heather, you don't understand.
Did you kiss her?
Well,
Did you?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I did, but it was purely scientific.
Of course. It was all part of the investigation, I suppose.
Yes, that's right. I've got a theory, you see, that the only way you can find out what's going on in the mind of a moderately attractive woman is to kiss her. Well, that's all.
You've got no more moral sense than a stoat.
Now, look, Heather,
And another thing. If you leave this flat before I come back, I'll brain you. The inspector's holding me responsible for you, and I'm not going to prison just because you can't keep your hands off a moderately attractive woman.
Dearie me. When will I learn not to tell the truth to women?
And you needn't think that I brought you here because I like you. I did it because I've got a misplaced sense of humanity.
Yes, well, after she had gone, I bathed, shaved, and dressed, and felt fine. Then I wondered what to do next, and felt awful. I knew I'd have to go on with this case, even if it meant Heather being locked up. Was I behaving like a gentleman? Regretfully, I had to answer no. So I picked up the phone and called up Martin Sowerby's office. They told me he hadn't been there for 3 days, but was believed to be at his home in Hampstead. During the call, I heard a faint click on the line and knew that it was being tapped. I've tapped too many lines myself not to miss that. Then I went over to the window and looked out. In a doorway across the street, there was a thin guy in a greasy trench coat and a soft hat tugged down over his eyes. I didn't need to ask myself what he was doing. I saved the time and asked myself how I was going to get out of the building without him seeing me. I found an answer to that quicker than I expected. A big furniture van was parked outside the main door, and luckily the removal was taking place from a flat on the same floor as Heather's. I went along and found the man in charge of the proceedings.
Yes, I'm the foreman on this job.
Care for a cigarette?
Thanks, don't mind if I do. Yes, being a foreman's not an easy job.
Here you are.
General public makes a lot of jokes about it, I know. I think being a foreman's the same as retiring from work.
People are malicious, Andy.
Beg pardon?
People don't understand things very well.
Oh, they do not. Well, they don't understand I've got to use me head. For instance, when we shift this here wardrobe, I'll get 2 men on it, a tall one and a short one. I'll put the tall one in front and the little one behind. Then when they go down the stairs with the wardrobe, it'll keep on an even keel. And that's what I call planning.
I don't believe it. It isn't possible to get that thing down on an even keel.
OK, we'll shift it now and you'll see.
Well, I bet you a pound you don't get it down on an even keel.
Done! Easiest quid I ever made.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, I'll have to ride down in the wardrobe myself.
What for?
Well, to see whether it does keep on an even keel.
You're pulling my leg?
Look, I'll give you £2 if you get me carried out in that wardrobe.
Done! You're probably crazy, but who am I to worry?
In spite of the foreman's boast, the wardrobe did not go down those stairs on an even keel. I did the journey mostly on my head. He must have got mixed up and put the short guy in front. Anyway, I parted with the £2, happy to get out of the building without the watcher in the doorway knowing a thing about it. I found a cab and went to Hampstead. Thackeray Lodge was one of those rambling Victorian houses, half buried behind shrubbery and trees. I rang the bell for a long time, but got no answer. So I went round the back and climbed over a wall and into the garden. A pair of French windows gave onto a stone terrace, and I made for them. Martin Sorrelby was sitting alone beside the fireplace. An empty whiskey bottle stood on the mantelpiece, another lay on the grate, 2 more lay on the carpet, and, well, it looked like the end of a drunkard's convention. So did Sorrelby. There was a couple of days' growth on his pasty face. I pushed open the French window, and he screamed.
No! No! Who's there? No, keep away! No!
All right, Mr. Sorrelby, all right. No one's going to hurt you.
No, get back! Get back! I'll shoot you if you come a step nearer.
Now, put that gun away, Mr. Sorrelby. It doesn't go with your face.
No, get back. I swear I'll shoot.
You know who I am, don't you?
Yes, I know who you are. Now, get back.
Now, look, Mr. Sorrelby. I misjudged you. I didn't think you had the guts. Now, give me that gun.
Now, go away. Go away. I'll kill you.
Give me the gun.
Oh, no.
That's better. Magazine full. You must have been scared. I'm sorry I had to hit you, Mr. Sorrelby. Now, sit down here. Is there any more whiskey, or have you killed it all?
What do you want?
I want to talk to you.
You're not going to kill me?
Look, Mr. Sorrelby, I'm on the side of the cops. I know Inspector Rigby doesn't think so, but I am. I'm not killing anyone. Not today. Now get a grip on yourself.
I've got nothing to say to you. I told you that in my office.
You gave me a lot of double talk. I want the truth now.
Leave me alone. Please, leave me alone.
You know, you're in bad shape. You're a sick man. There's a little whiskey left in this bottle. Yeah, drink it. Now, look, Mr. Sorrelby, I didn't mean to scare you. I don't want to interfere in things that don't concern me. But this is murder. 2 people have been killed. And there may be others on the list.
Yes, there are. I'm on it myself.
How do you know that?
Oh, it's been coming for some time. I know they're going to kill me.
Who's they?
Oh, can you help me? Can you? Oh, you seem to be a resourceful man. Someone I could trust.
You can trust me, all right, if you tell me the truth.
What do you want to know?
First, why McMara was blackmailing you.
What? How did you know about that?
Just let me ask the questions. It'll be simpler.
Well, it can't matter if I tell you. Years ago, before I came to London, I was mixed up in the death of a young man.
Called George Maybrick?
Well, how did you...
Go on. Did you kill Maybrick?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I was drunk at the time. Maybrick and I were friends. He worked for Christopher Hamden, the racehorse owner, and I was on the local paper. I was in love with a girl in the town.
Kitty Stapleton?
Yes.
Go on.
I adored her. I worshipped the ground she walked on. One day I introduced her to Maybrick. Well, perhaps you can guess what happened.
I can. One of the oldest stories in the world. Never trust your best friend unless he's under lock and key. What happened?
I started drinking. One night I went to Maybrick's cottage on the Hamden estate. They were together. I was mad drunk. There was a fight. He banged his head against the fender. I didn't wait to see any more. Next day I heard he was dead. I ran away and I never went back. Afterwards I heard there'd been an inquest and a verdict of suicide.
What happened to Kitty?
I don't know. She ran out to get help when we started to fight. I heard she disappeared after that night.
And Hampton? Where did he fit in?
I don't know.
You knew him, didn't you?
Yes.
He told me a story about some racing swindle that took place at the time of Maybrick's death. Know anything about it?
Yes. He had one of his horses pulled. He was in debt, and so was I. I went in with him because I knew a lot of people in the town, and he reckoned I'd be useful if anything leaked out.
According to Hampton, Maybrick hanged himself.
I know. I was astonished when I heard that. But when I last saw him, Maybrick was lying on the floor with his head cut open.
Why didn't you go to the police?
I was afraid.
How did Ricky McMara get hold of this story after 15 years?
I don't know. He came to me and said he got concrete evidence in the form of a letter which proved I'd killed Maybrick. We knew everything about it, details that I thought no other living soul knew. I was afraid and I paid him.
But when McMara died, the blackmail went on. That right?
Yes. The day after his death, I had a telephone call.
Man or woman?
Woman.
Recognize the voice?
No. She said the blackmail was going on. Only now it couldn't be settled by money.
What then?
She said I was to write an article on the Middle East situation. And if I do, it can't fail to get me chucked out of Fleet Street. She gave me 3 days to do it in. The 3 days are up.
Why have you shut yourself up here?
Oh, my nerves gave way. You know, I've been having treatment.
Is that the front door?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go.
No, don't. No, I'm afraid.
That's all right. I won't let anyone hurt you, Mr. Sowerby.
Is Mr. Sowerby at home?
Who wants him?
Dr. Fry.
Oh. Come in. Dr. Alexander Frey?
That's right.
You have a private nut factory out in Blackheath, haven't you?
I have a nursing home there.
Name of Glendale?
That's right. Do you know it?
I do indeed. It's getting to be quite famous, or ought I to say notorious.
What are you talking about?
Never mind. Come and see Mr. Sowerby. We can talk later.
Martin, my dear fellow, where have you been?
Oh, I haven't been feeling at all well.
Oh, my poor Martin, you look terrible. You must be careful, you know. You can't afford to take risks with your health. I've told you that often enough. Oh, you should have called me at once.
Oh, yes, I know.
We'll have to have a talk. If your friend will excuse me.
You'd better go, Mr. Odell.
I'll wait in another room.
Mr. Sowerby won't be fit to talk any more today.
I'll sit and play gin rummy with him then.
Please go.
Yes, Mr. Odell. Please go.
Okay, I'll go. But I'll come back. I left Dr. Frey and Sowerby together, reluctantly. Here was more mystery. Dr. Frey. Sowerby was very, very scared of him. I played with the idea of doing a little eavesdropping, but it wasn't practical, so I left the house and caught a cab to Wimpole Street. On the way, I thought over everything that had happened during the past 3 days. At last, there seemed to be a definite pattern to it all. The whole thing appeared to hinge on the blackmailing of Hampton and Sowerby. What I had to find out was the truth about this blackmail, and as I saw it, the most likely place to find it was in Dr. Frey's consulting rooms. Frey was a psychiatrist, and Sowerby, being a patient of his, probably had told him all about Maybrick's death.
No doubt Frey would have notes about it, and I was going to have a look at those notes. That was the idea in my mind, anyway, when I ran up the steps of the house in Wimpole Street and thumbed the bell marked Dr. Alexander Frey. A girl opened the door, a blonde with ice-blue eyes and the kind of shape that tired businessmen dream about. I asked her if I could come in and turned on my best smile, but the smile died the death of a dog. All she did was to shift the ice from her eyes and move it down to her voice.
Have you an appointment?
Well, yes, in a way.
Please come in. What did you say the name was?
I didn't. It's Odell, Philip Odell.
Oh.
I saw Dr. Frey out in Hampstead, and we arranged to have a talk here.
I see. Well, if you'll go into the waiting room, please.
Are you, busy?
I have work to do, yes.
You haven't got time to talk to me, I suppose.
I'm afraid not.
Oh, it's a pity. You see, I'm sort of scared. When I go to see a doctor, I usually have someone along to hold my hand.
Holding hands is not part of my duty. I'm glad to say. Wait in here, please.
Well, you couldn't say I'd made a good start with that girl. My charm was as potent as a bottle of nightclub scotch, where she was concerned. I sat down and thumbed through a couple of magazines, and then went out into the hall to renew the attack. The blonde was in a small office next to the waiting room, and she was giving the typewriter a terrible pasting. I leaned against the jamb of the door and tried to look as if I didn't care whether she talked to me or not. At first, she pretended not to see me, and then her neck began to turn red, and she stopped typing, glared at me, and finally said,
Are you looking for someone?
Yes, you.
What do you want, please?
I want to talk to you.
I'm sorry, I've work to do. If you'll stay in the waiting room...
I don't like that waiting room. It makes me think about death, and I don't want to think about death. I want to think about life and fun. I want to think about you.
You can think about me in the waiting room.
No, it's not that kind of thinking.
Excuse me, I've work to do.
How long have you been working for Dr. Frey? Oh, you think I can't shout that thing down, do you? Okay, how long have you been working for Dr. Frey?
I beg your pardon?
That's better. Now, how come a pretty girl like you is handmaiden to an undersized nerve doctor? You know, you could do better with those eyes and that shape, especially that shape.
Are you drunk?
Oh, dear, that's bad. She thinks a guy has to be drunk to appreciate her shape. Bad.
I think you better go back to the waiting room.
The doctor will be quite a time. He's got a bad case of hysteria on his hands in Hampstead. Look, let's have a party, Here,
What's that?
a flask. It's full of scotch. Good scotch, too. Have some.
No, thank you.
It might take the ice out of your eyes. It's a bad thing for a pretty girl to go around with 2 chips of ice in her eyes.
Is it?
Oh, very bad, yes. A pretty girl's eyes ought to be warm and inviting, like the lights in the window on a winter's night. You sure you won't have a slug?
Quite sure.
Oh, I will. This is heavy work. Better? Look, Sugar, I want you to help me.
Well, I don't want to help you. And please don't call me Sugar.
There have been a couple of killings, murders, and Dr. Frey's mixed up in them.
What?
If it comes out later that you knew something and didn't tell, that'd be bad, Sugar.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Martin Sowerby, the newspaper editor, comes here for treatment, doesn't he?
I'm sorry, I don't discuss the doctor's affairs.
Oh, of course you don't. No. I saw a pair of earrings that look awfully cute on those ears of yours.
Did you?
If you talked to Daddy, might buy them for you.
I've told you I don't discuss Dr. Frey's affairs, and now if you'll excuse me, I'll get on.
Yes, she was tough, that little blonde. Her resistance was terrific. She could resist bribery, good Scotch whiskey, and even flattery. Well, what could you do with a girl like that? I retired to the doorway to think it over and lit a cigarette to help my thinking processes. At that, she stopped typing and began to look at me wide-eyed. There was even some come hither in those ice-blue peepers. I came back into the room quick.
Mr. Odell?
What's the matter, Sugar? You're not softening, are you?
Is that a French cigarette you're smoking?
Yes, it is.
Would you like one?
Oh, I'd love one.
Here, have the packet.
Oh, thanks. I'd adore a French cigarette. Haven't had one since my holiday in Villefranche.
Mm.
Can I thank you?
Yes. How can you by talking?
Well, I ought not to, you know.
Well, you won't get into any trouble. I'll see to that.
Well, what is it you want to know?
A few things about Martin Sowerby. What's the matter with him?
Difficult to say. He has the appearance and mannerisms of a manic depressive, but there are things about him that point to the inhibited exhibitionist.
You don't say.
Yes. He comes here for psychoanalysis, you know.
When did he start coming?
Just over 3 months ago.
Look, I'm not too well up on my Freud. How does a psychoanalysis work?
Well, first the doctor gets the patient to lie down and relax, and then to say whatever comes into his mind. It's a long business. Sometimes Dr. Frey spends as long as 12 months over a case.
Does he take notes of what the patient tells him?
Oh, yes.
Do you think I can have a look at his notes on Martin Sowerby?
It wouldn't do any good. They're in code.
Do you know the code?
No, I'm afraid not.
Does anyone, aside from the doctor?
I don't think so. His wife might. She was his secretary before he married her.
His wife, huh? Is she about?
No, they don't live here, you know. They have a house round the corner, number 58. Oh, that's Dr. Frey now. Shall I tell him you're here?
Yes, ask him if I can see him at once. I'm in a hurry.
I'll see what I can do, and thanks for the cigarette.
Oh, that's all right.
The doctor will see you now, Mr. Odell.
Come in, Mr. Odell. Sorry you had to wait.
That's all right. I didn't waste any time. How's Sowerby?
Oh, he's better. I gave him a sedative and got into bed. Now, what can I do for you?
I'm investigating 2 killings, murders. They're both connected with the blackmailing of Martin Sowerby.
Oh, yes?
You probably know he was being blackmailed.
Yes, I do know.
Someone found out the truth of what happened to George Maybrick 15 years ago. And what I want to know is, how did that someone find out?
How should I know?
Well, for 15 years, Sowerby kept his mouth shut and nothing happened. Then 3 months ago, he came to you for psychoanalysis. He told you the truth about Maybrick's death, and right after that, the blackmail started.
Are you accusing me of blackmail, Mr. Odell?
I think it's quite probable that the blackmailer got his information from you. I don't see how else he could have got it.
What Sowerby told me during the course of the analysis is secret, Mr. Odell. I haven't told it to another living soul.
You kept notes of his case, didn't you?
Yes, but only I could read them.
And what about your wife? Does she know the code you use?
My wife?
Well, she used to be your secretary.
My wife has no reason to blackmail Sowerby. She doesn't even know him. Yes? What is it?
Mr. Hamden's here, Doctor.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'll see him. Mr. Odell is just going.
Hampton's a patient of yours, too, is he?
Yes.
And he's being blackmailed as well.
Good morning, Doctor. Oh.
Hello, Mr. Hampton. Nerves troubling you again?
You have a habit of turning up in unexpected places, Odell.
Yes, don't I?
I must say you confuse me. I'm never quite sure what you're supposed to be doing.
I'm working for you.
Are you?
You gave me a check for £300, remember? And I want to start spending it. It's burning a hole in my pocket.
Now, let's see. What was it you were going to do for me?
Find out who's blackmailing you.
Have you found out?
Yes. Yes, I think I have.
Mr. Odell's such a clever fellow, Doctor. His methods are unusual. He runs up fire escapes. He insults people with delightful insouciance.
What does he do for a living?
He's a private detective.
How exciting.
Oh, it has its boring moments, but you meet a lot of interesting people. Still, I expect you do that in your racket, too.
Racket?
You see what I mean about his insulting people?
It's amazing what a person will blurt out if you insult him in the right place. Well, all right, I'll leave you to your consultation.
Aren't you going to tell me who's been blackmailing me?
Ooh, not in front of Dr. Frey.
Then come and see me as soon as you can.
Yes, I will. Well, goodbye, Dr. Frey.
Goodbye.
Thanks for everything.
Are you having trouble with your nerves, too, Mr. Odell?
No, my curiosity. That's what's troubling me. I happened to meet Dr. Frey out in Hampstead at Martin Sowerby's house, and I got the idea that he might be able to help me. And I was right. He has been able to help. A lot. Good morning, gentlemen.
You didn't tell him about our talk, did you, Mr. Odell?
Not a word. Just a minute. I want to hear what Hampton's talking about.
Doctor.
Yes?
That fellow Odell said that you were out at Martin Sowerby's place.
That's right.
Is Sowerby a patient of yours?
Yes, he is.
I didn't know that. Very interesting. Is he having one of these psychoanalysis too?
Yes, he is. Now, Mr. Hampton, if you'll lie on the couch, we'll begin.
No. Would you mind if we skipped it today? I don't feel quite up to it, you know.
But I thought you were anxious to get it finished.
I am. But I suddenly remembered something I ought to have done. I'll come back tomorrow, if I may.
All right, then.
Sorry to have wasted your time.
Mr. Hampton's gone.
Yes. Left in quite a hurry. Wonder what he's up to.
It isn't like him. He usually stays a long time. He enjoys psychoanalysis, gives him a wonderful chance to show off. He's an exhibitionist of a high order.
Yes, I've seen some of his exhibitions. Now, Sugar, what number did you say Mrs. Frey lived at?
Number 58. It's the first house round the corner.
Oh, thanks. Oh, tell me one more thing. Do you happen to know Mrs. Frey's maiden name?
Yes. Now, what is it? She was a Miss Kitty...
Stapleton?
Yes, that's right. Kitty Stapleton.
Boy, oh boy, now we are getting somewhere. Goodbye, Sugar. I'll see you get all the French cigarettes you can smoke. I raced out into Wimpole Street like a kid let out of school. Now the whole thing really added up. Kitty Stapleton and George Maybrick had been in love. Maybrick had been killed by Hampton, or Sowerby, or both. And they got away with it. But Kitty knew. Knew, but couldn't prove. She had to wait 15 years for the proof. She had to wait until Hampton and Sowerby came to her husband and told him the truth. She got it from his notes. Then she set to work to ruin the two men who had caused the death of her lover. It was she who had employed Ricky McMara. Yes, it was all clear now. There was only one thing left to find out. Who had killed Ricky and Marilyn Peters, and why? And I figured I'd probably find that out from Kitty. So I went round to number 58. But while all this was happening, Inspector Rigby hadn't been idle. He was on the snoop as usual, and doing it in Heather's flat. When she came back from the shop at lunchtime to see if I was still there, she found the inspector going through her desk, watched by Sergeant Layton.
I'm back, Philip.
Come in, Miss McMara.
Oh, it's you.
Yes, it's me.
Enjoying yourself?
Tolerably, thank you.
Obviously, you're the sort of man who enjoys reading other people's letters.
I've been searching your desk in an official capacity. I have a search warrant.
Oh. Did you happen to read the letters from a boy called Cedric?
No.
That's a pity. You ought to have done. He had a lot of warm blood in him. It wouldn't hurt you to know how the other half of the world lives, Inspector.
What are you giggling at, Layton?
Nothing, sir.
Are you going to stay long, Inspector?
That depends.
Well, I wish you'd make up your mind. If you're going to stay more than a few minutes, I'll make arrangements to move out.
We're looking for Mr. Odell, Miss McMara. Do you know where he is?
Oh, didn't the inspector find him in my desk?
Don't try to be funny. Where is Odell? Well, where is he?
Would you like a drink?
No, thank you.
What about you, Sergeant?
Well,
I've got some Scotch whiskey. Go on, have a drop. Even if the inspector does keep you in after school, it'll be worth it.
Yes, Miss McMara, I will. I'm retiring next week anyway. The police force isn't what it was.
Come back, Miss McMara.
I'm fetching the sergeant his drink. Your search warrant doesn't say that I'm not to behave like a hostess, does it?
Confounded girl. Thinks because she's got a few curls and a nice figure, she can defy anything in trousers.
Well, she's got something there, Inspector. Even you've got to admit that.
You can keep your observations to yourself, Layton. I'll deal with you when we get back to the yard.
Oh, phooey.
What did you say?
I said phooey.
What does that mean?
It means I think you're a fool, sir.
Now look here, Layton.
I've been wanting to tell you this ever since I first set eyes on you. And now I'm going to do it, even if it costs me my pension. You've been to police college. You passed all your examinations. You know all the right answers to all the right questions. But you're still a bad detective.
Oh, am I?
Yes, you are. And you know why? Because you haven't got a trace of humanity in you. That girl was right. You ought to go out and find out how ordinary, warm-blooded people live. Then maybe you get on a bit better, and you'll be a better detective. You'll never be any good at police work so long as you go about alienating people. I never went to college, but I do know that.
Here we are. Now, Sergeant, would you like some ice in it?
Oh, I would indeed, thank you.
Sure you won't join us, Inspector?
Well...
Go on, sir. Have a bash.
All right, I will.
That's the stuff. Now, we can all be nice and friendly.
Not too much, Miss McMara. And plenty of soda.
There. How's that?
Fine, thanks.
Well, here's luck.
Cheers.
Now, Miss McMara, where is Odell?
Odell?
Yes, Odell. I left him in your charge, remember?
Of course. Well, he's much better. I know you'll be pleased to hear that.
Yes, but where is he?
He's got a wonderful constitution, remarkable powers of recovery.
Quite, but where is he now?
Of course, there may be a delayed shock. There often is in these cases, I believe.
I didn't come here to inquire about his health. I want to know where he is.
Oh, you mean you want to know where he is?
I'm glad I've managed to make myself clear at last.
Oh, well, he just stepped outside to buy a packet of cigarettes.
It's taking him a long time, isn't it? Sergeant Layton and I have been here for almost an hour. There's a tobacconist just across the street.
Well, perhaps he didn't get the brand that he likes.
Look, Miss McMara.
Oh, excuse me, the telephone. Hello? Yes? Oh, yes, just a minute. It's for you, Inspector.
Oh, thanks. Inspector Rigby here. Yes? Oh. Yes, what's the address? Thackeray Lodge, Heath Road. Yes, all right, I'll come right away. I'll have to go now, Miss McMara, but I'll be back later. When Odell comes in with those cigarettes, keep him here.
Oh, of course.
Tell him it'll be the worse for him if he isn't here when I come back. All right, Layton.
What's the matter? New development?
Yes, an important one. They've just found the body of Martin Sorrowby.
Is Mrs. Frey at home?
What name is it?
Odell. Philip Odell.
Oh, no, Mrs. Frey isn't in.
I think she will be when you tell her my name. Just go on and try it.
Oh, yes, but she told me that I wasn't.
shoo.
Mrs. Frey, there's a Mr. Odell. Yes, Odell to see you. Is that all right? Right, you are. Mrs. Frey will see you.
You bet she will.
She's in the garden.
Where's that? Out the back?
No, on the roof. You'll have to go up in the lift.
You were very quick getting up there and back.
No, I didn't. I spoke on the house telephone. The lift's self-operating. Press the button marked 4.
The marvels of modern science. Okay, you can close the doors.
Well, Mr. Odell?
So, I was right. Kitty Stapleton, Mrs. Frey, the elusive lady in mink. Well.
I've been expecting you to come.
You knew I'd find you then.
Of course. I made a slip letting you get out of Glendale. I knew you'd find out it was owned by my husband and that through him you'd trace me.
So you've been here tending the flowers and waiting for me.
More or less. Well, what are you going to do?
Well, right now, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. Would you like one?
Thank you.
Well, I've got the whole story now, or at least most of it.
How clever you are.
Not really. In fact, I haven't been the least bit bright. It took me quite a while to catch on. It's a pretty sordid story, isn't it? For 15 years, you've been walking about with hatred in your heart, and already 2 people have died because of it. A nasty story.
It had a nasty beginning. Can you imagine what it did to me when George Maybrick was murdered? Have you any idea how I felt?
I think so, yes.
I wonder. I wonder if anyone who hasn't been through a thing like that can understand. To know that someone you loved had been brutally done to death.
All I understand is that in trying to revenge yourself, McMara and Marilyn Peters had to die.
I didn't kill them.
Didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Well, even if you didn't, you're responsible for their deaths.
No. I made a business arrangement with McMara. When he undertook to blackmail Hampden and Sorrowby for me, he knew what he was going into.
It wasn't my fault that he was killed.
I don't think you really believe that.
What are you trying to do? Appeal to my better nature? If you are, you won't succeed.
I wonder.
I believe you're a sentimentalist, Mr. Odell.
Maybe I am. Certainly, I hate to see things that have been warped.
Oh, is that what I am?
Of course, you couldn't be anything but warped after walking around for 15 years with a load of hatred in your heart.
I'll be crying in a minute.
All right. Suppose you'd succeeded. Suppose I hadn't blundered into this and you'd put the fixer on Hamden and Sowerby. What do you get out of it?
The satisfaction of knowing that justice had been done to George Maybrick.
And at what a price. The price of 2 lives. Do you think that you'd be able to settle down and live a normal, happy life after that? Did you think that you could suddenly stop it and become a good wife and maybe a mother?
Be quiet.
And what about this little guy, Frey, you're married to? What about him? He seems a nice little bird. You married him only to get the proof you've been waiting for, the material with which you were going to ruin Hamden and Sowerby. Wasn't exactly a nice thing to do, was it?
I suppose it's being an American that makes you so sentimental.
I'm not an American. I'm an Irishman.
Oh, that makes you even more sentimental.
You should sneer at me for being sentimental. What you've been doing for the past 15 years is as sentimental as a Victorian love ballad. Being so much in love with a man that you'd wait all this time to avenge his death.
And you think that's a dreadful thing, do you?
Not in itself. It was the way you went about it that was bad. Why didn't you go to the police and tell them what you'd found out and leave them to deal with Hamden and Sowerby?
They beat the law once 15 years ago. They could do it again. I wasn't going to take a chance.
Okay. Well, this is the end of the line for you. You failed, and you're going to have to talk fast to beat a murder rap.
A murder rap?
Sure. My only interest in this is to find out who killed Ricky McMara.
But I didn't kill him. I told you so.
Well, you tell it to the police. They may be less skeptical than I am. Will you, come to the yard with me, or do you want to be arrested here?
No. No, I'll come with you. I'll just go and get my coat.
She went through a window that gave onto the roof garden. She looked forlorn and beaten. I felt a little sorry for her. She was a lovely woman. She wasn't made to be mixed up in a sordid mess like this. It was all wrong. It was like setting a beautiful jewel in brass. I stood in that roof among the flowers waiting for her to come back, and I felt really sad. I wished that I'd gone to Ireland in the first place and never got myself mixed up in it. Well, after about 5 minutes, it began to be clear that she wasn't coming back. I went over to the window through which she had disappeared. It led into her bedroom. The bedroom was empty. There was another window. It was open, and it gave onto the roof of the house next door. Across the roof, I could see an open doorway, the way she had obviously gone down into the house. Well, I followed, but it was no use. She had had 5 minutes' start and made the most of it. It was a stupid thing to have lost her. I ought to have gone to Dr. Frey and had my head examined, but I'd been quite taken in by her air of resignation and defeat. I didn't think she'd make a break for it. Not that she'd get far. That was some consolation. Now I had her name and a lot of essential dope on her. It wouldn't be long before Inspector Rigby would be putting the bite on her. Inspector Rigby. By this time, he was out in Hampstead at Thackeray Lodge, and he was going to work in his usual way.
Hello, Doctor.
Hello, Inspector.
Determined the cause of death?
Yes. Strangulation.
Not a pretty sight, is it?
A man never looks at his best after he's been strangled.
Is this how he was found?
Yes. Slumped back in the chair.
Didn't put up much of a struggle by the look of it?
No. Same as the Peters girl. It has the same handwriting. The chap who did it's a beautiful strangler.
When we catch him, you must have a long talk with him.
Do you think you're going to catch him?
Of course.
Better get a move on.
What do you think I've been doing? Watching the river flow past?
A girl who works in a beauty shop's one thing, but a man in Sowerby's position, something quite different. He probably has friends in high places. People who could put pressure on the commissioner.
Could I have your medical opinion as soon as possible, please?
Well, I suppose you know what you're doing.
I do, thank you, Doctor. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Leighton.
Yes, Inspector?
Checked up?
Oh, there's not much. Details the discovery of body, statement of neighbors, and nothing there. Oh, Sotheby was alone in the house. He sent his servants away 3 days ago.
Now, let's have a look over the room. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 5 empty whiskey bottles. Ashtrays overflowing. Evidently had a party. Hello, what's this? A cheque. Pay Philip Odell £300, Martin Sotheby. Today's date.
Odell?
Your friend. Again.
Now, look, Inspector, is it likely that he did this?
What do you think?
Well, it's absurd. He knows you've got your eye on him. Is it likely that he'd commit murder?
Murder's rarely a likely occurrence before it's committed.
Oh, these police college maxims. Look, Odell isn't a complete fool. He's a clever man. Look up his dossier if you don't believe me.
I have done. Colourful reading. He's rated one of the top agents in the American service.
Well, is it likely that a man with a record like that would leave a cheque made payable to himself right beside the body of the man he just strangled?
This is a complex affair, Leighton. Anything might happen.
Oh, well, you're in charge. Only for Pete's sake, let's do something.
Festina Lente, Leighton?
Oh, sure. Pro bono publico. But where does that get us?
Near to the man who strangled McMara, Marilyn Peters, and Sotheby.
Near enough to slip a pair of handcuffs on him?
Maybe. Come on.
Where to?
Miss McMara's flat. We've got to talk to Odell now.
Was that the doorbell, Angel?
It was.
I suppose it's Inspector Rigby.
Yes. It's about time he showed up again.
Afraid so. Could you reach over and flip me another cigarette, Angel? Thanks.
Like another drink?
No, I haven't finished this one yet. This is nice, isn't it?
Very.
You and me beside the fire with evening coming on.
There's nothing like a quiet domestic life.
Quite.
Never noticed it before, Philip. But that doorbell has a distinctly raucous timbre.
Raucous what?
Timbre. Tone.
Oh, yes. Well, maybe you should get one of those whimsy contraptions which play the bluebells of Scotland when you press the button.
I don't like the bluebells of Scotland.
No?
No. It reminds me of cold schoolrooms.
Oh, dear. Did you have an unhappy childhood, Heather?
Not particularly. I never had enough to eat, though.
Was that due to financial hardship or greed?
Greed.
I do believe that is the doorbell, Angel.
Do you know, I believe it is.
Shall we answer it?
What do you think?
Well, heads we do, tails we don't. Our luck's out. It's heads.
I'll go. Oh, it's Inspector Rigby. Do come in, Inspector.
Thank you.
Philip, guess who's here?
Father Christmas?
Nearly right. It's Inspector Rigby.
Oh, Inspector, this is a delightful surprise. Let me, take your hat and coat.
I'm not staying.
Oh, what a shame.
Are you too deaf?
Deaf, Inspector?
I've been ringing that bell for nearly 5 minutes.
Oh, have you? Odell thought he heard something, didn't you, Philip?
I've no time to waste. Odell, are you ready to make this statement?
Oh, sure, any time you say.
Then we'll go along to the yard now. We shan't be interrupted there.
Okay, I'll get my hat and coat.
There's one thing I want to say to you, Miss McMara.
Oh, yes?
When I was here last, I told you that the body of Martin Sotheby had been found.
That's right.
Have you mentioned it to Odell?
Not yet. He came back only a short while before you arrived.
Well, don't tell him. I want it kept a strict secret. We've managed to keep the press out. I don't want my plans upset. Do you understand?
Perfectly.
In case it might be too big a strain on you, I'll tell Odell myself at the right moment.
Are you going to keep him long at the yard?
That depends on him.
Well, here we are. I'm ready, Inspector.
Right, let's go.
Bye, Angel. I'll call you later.
Bye.
The taking of my statement turned out to be more like a mild go of the 3rd degree. Rigby sat me in a chair, turned a powerful reading lamp on my face, and shot questions at me like a Tommy gun out of control. Sergeant Leighton took it all down in a big notebook, and you could tell by the expression on his face that he was enjoying it about as much as a visit to the dentist. When I'd got to the end of my story, hampered rather than aided by Rigby's method of interrogation, he switched off the lamp and gave me a cigarette. Then he went across and stood with his back to the fireplace and looked very thoughtful.
Well, we have this. Kitty Stapleton, or Mrs. Prey, or whatever she calls herself, has been blackmailing Hampton and Sotheby with material she got from her husband's case histories. An interesting idea.
There's a moral in it. Never go to a psychoanalyst if he's got a good-looking wife.
Quiet, Leighton.
Yes, sir.
Now, why didn't she do the blackmailing herself? Why did she employ Ricky McMara? Have you any ideas about that, Odell?
Well, she'd been waiting 15 years for the proof for something that showed that Hampton and Sorrowby were responsible for Maybrick's death. Finally, she got it. By becoming Frey's secretary, and then marrying him, and getting to know his code. That's pretty long-term planning.
Pretty unscrupulous, too. Marrying a man so she could blackmail 2 other men.
Quite. And after all that, Kitty Stapleton was taking no chances. She set McMara loose on them first to see if they were going to rise to the blackmail. At least that's how I see it.
Sounds reasonable, but why was McMara killed?
Maybe he'd served his purpose.
But McMara was strangled before he was put in the river. So was Marilyn Peters. It takes a good deal of strength to choke the life out of someone, you know.
And Kitty employs a gorilla called Jay. He has a grip like an iron clamp. I know. I've felt it.
Well, this is no time for speculation. We've got to find Kitty Stapleton. Pity you let her go.
Yes, I've been kicking myself ever since it happened, but she fooled me completely.
Perhaps when we've got a statement from her, we'll have the missing link between the blackmail and the murders. Perhaps we'll know who killed McMara, Marilyn Peters, and Sorrowby.
What? Sorrowby? Is he dead?
Yes, he was strangled about 2 hours ago. Strangled? The murderer left the front door open, and a constable saw it and went in. We were on the scene very shortly after it happened.
But I left Sorrowby a little over 2 hours ago. He was with Dr. Frey.
I know. Now, Odell, I don't want you to mention this. Only 6 people know Sorrowby is dead. I don't want anyone else to know. Is that clear?
Sure, but who were the 6?
The 3 of us here, the police surgeon, a constable, and Miss McMara. Leighton, go and get the car out.
Yes, Inspector.
Well, I don't think it'll be long before we have Kitty Stapleton, and then we'll see how far she bears out your statement, Odell.
And what do you want me to do? Stay here?
No, you can go, but keep in touch. Leave where you can be found with the switchboard. I may need you at a moment's notice.
Okay. Well, good hunting.
Just a minute.
Yes?
Ever seen this before?
What's that? Pay Philip Odell £300, Martin Sorrowby. Where'd you get this?
It was found beside Sorrowby's body.
So what?
This is the second cheque for 300 you had, isn't it? The other you got from Christopher Hampton.
Well?
When McMara was doing the blackmail, he got £300 a time.
Meaning?
As you say yourself, there's a strong connection between this blackmail and the 3 murders. Well, that's all. Don't forget to leave your whereabouts with the switchboard.
I went out into Whitehall and walked away thinking. Quite suddenly, I got scared. Things weren't running my way. It was all very well for me to think Inspector Rigby was an overzealous young fathead, but he was the law, and he had the whole force of the Metropolitan Police behind him to prove it. And if he'd fallen in love with the idea that I'd killed McMara in order to take over the blackmailing pitch, there wasn't anything I could do about it. I had done my best by giving him that statement, but just how good was that statement? I couldn't substantiate any of it. Everything that had happened to me alone. Everything I'd been told had been told to me with no witnesses. If Hampton and Kitty chose to repudiate what they had told me, I'd be in a bad fix. Yes, I'd good reason to be scared. What made it so bad was the knowledge that there was nothing I could do. You see, alone, I hadn't a hope of finding Kitty. I'd have to leave that to Rigby and sit tight and see what happened. Well, to be scared is bad, but to be scared and inactive is much, much worse. I ducked into a pub to see what 2 fast brandies would do. They restored a little confidence, so I went out and called up Heather.
Hello?
Heather, this is Odell. I've given my statement to Inspector Rigby, and he's turned me loose on society again. What shall we do about it?
I don't know. Any ideas?
Plenty. Look, you remember the night all this started? You said that when it was over, we could have a night out. Well, it is over now, so far as we're concerned. Inspector Rigby does the rest. So, what about it?
But it's past 10. I'm just going to bed.
Well, look, change your mind. We can go to a nightclub.
The Paradise Room's a good spot, they tell me. I'll be around in a cab in about half an hour.
Okay. Oh, but don't bring a cab. We can use my car and make a proper night out.
Your car?
Yes, my car.
I can't wait to see it. You know, this is quite a nice little car, Angel. Handles nicely, too.
Yes, I bought it out of a legacy. I'm rather pleased with it.
I didn't know you were such a good judge of engines.
No, I didn't buy it for its engine. I liked the color. It matched a suit I looked rather good in.
Matched a suit.
Hey, where are we going?
Around this corner.
I thought the Paradise Room was near Berkeley Square.
It is.
But you're heading for South Kensington, the opposite direction. Oh, and now what are you doing?
Turning left.
But that'll take us down to the river.
All right, we'll go left again, huh? There. That better?
Are you playing some little game of your own?
Yes, I'm trying to find out if that yellow coupe behind is really following us. It is.
Why?
Now, that's a good question, Heather. I'm glad you asked that. We're going to find out the answer.
But how?
By letting it follow us.
Aren't we going to the Paradise Room, then?
We are. Someone wants to know where we're going, and it can't be Inspector Rigby because I told him less than a quarter of an hour ago.
If you ask me, I think you're having this night out under false pretenses.
Do you? Why?
You said this case was finished so far as we're concerned, but it doesn't look like it with that car following us, does it?
Well, do you want to call the whole thing off and go home to bed?
No, of course I don't. Philip?
Hmm?
You don't seem to be enjoying yourself.
Don't I?
No. You haven't spoken a word for the last half hour.
It has been known for a man to enjoy himself without speaking, Angel.
Not a man like you. Oh, what's the trouble? Are you worried about something?
Me? Worried? No. Of course not. Come on, let's dance.
It's a good band, isn't it?
Very.
Floor's quite good for a nightclub.
Yes, you can almost turn around on it.
Oh, what the heck are we talking like this for?
Like what?
A pair of tongue-tied adolescents. The band's good, isn't it? Oh, awfully. Nice floor. Oh, awfully. Shouldn't be surprised if we have some rain. Oh, what's the matter with you?
I'm thinking.
Well, you've picked a fine time and a place for it, I must say. Oh, let's go and sit down and have some more of this lovely tongue-tied conversation.
Now, wait a minute. I know this band leader. Maybe he'll play something that'll put me in a brighter frame of mind. Hi, Jerry.
Oh, Philip Odell, what brings you here?
A mistaken idea that he was in the mood for a night out.
Oh, Jerry, this is Heather McMara. Heather, this is Jerry.
Oh, how do you do?
How do you do? Philip thought you could play something to put him in a better mood.
Oh, sure. What'll it be?
Jerry, do you know a little thing called How Little We Know?
Yeah, sure I do. The band's got a break, but I'll play it for you on the piano.
Oh, thanks. Come over and have a drink when you're finished.
Oh, thanks. Coming up right away.
How Little We Know. That could be our theme song, Angel.
Could be anybody's.
You're a cynic. No, it particularly applies in this case. We've done a lot of hard work on it, covered a lot of ground, found out a lot of things, and yet how much do I really know?
So you haven't finished with it. I knew it.
I'm still as far off knowing who killed your brother as I was when I went into it.
But I thought you weren't interested in the identity of the murderer.
Well, I am now. I'm very interested. If he isn't found soon, I'm going to find myself in a very awkward spot.
Well.
Well, Mr. Hampton.
A cozy little party. Do you mind if I join you?
Oh, but certainly.
You're taking a night off, are you? Mind if I sit down?
Of course not. Sit down. Oh, this is Heather McMara, Ricky's sister.
How do you do, Miss McMara?
How do you do?
I believe you were the cause of Mr. Odell getting mixed up in this terrible business in the first place.
Oh, don't remind me of that, Mr. Hampton. I've been reproaching myself ever since.
Do you come often here, Mr. Hampton?
No. This is my first time.
You didn't happen to follow us here in a yellow coupe, did you?
I didn't. Parkin, my man, did. Do you mind if he joins us?
No, not at all. We could use a little of his inimitable joie de vivre.
Good evening, Mr. Odell.
You're a pretty good follower, Parkin. If you should ever need one, I dare say Inspector Rigby would give you a job.
Thank you, sir. I'll remember that.
You'd get on well with Rigby. He enjoys a touch of the sinister, too.
Would that be a joke, sir?
Yes, Mr. Odell is in festive mood, Parkin.
Is he, sir? I wonder why.
Exactly. I thought you were working for me, Mr. Odell. I thought you were going to find out who's been blackmailing me.
Oh, but I have done. We're spending that $300 you gave me.
Isn't it about time you told me, then?
Mm-hmm. It was Kitty Stapleton.
Kitty Stapleton?
Or maybe you know her better as Mrs. Alexander Frey.
Kitty Stapleton? Dr. Frey's wife? It isn't possible.
Didn't you meet her when you went to see the doctor?
No. I heard he'd married about 3 or 4 months ago. But I never saw her. She was never at the consulting room when I was there.
Well, that's who was blackmailing you. Kitty Stapleton.
I heard she'd left the country years ago. Well, this is a surprise.
What are you going to do about it?
What can I do?
I don't know. There's bound to be an inquiry. The police will want to know what, if anything, was in her contention that you killed Maybrick.
Maybrick killed himself. That case is closed.
Well, then, you've nothing to worry about, have you? The cops are after Kitty, they'll catch her, and she'll get a prison sentence for blackmail. That leaves you with nothing more to fear. Or does it?
Mr. Hampden, I think it's time for us to go.
Oh, after his bedtime, is it?
That's right, sir. Come along, Mr. Hampden.
Just a moment, Parkin. There's one thing more I want to know, Mr. Odell.
Yes?
Who killed McMara, Marilyn Peters, and Martin Sowerby? Well?
Mr. Hampton, I've given up the case. Inspector Rigby's in charge now. He may be able to tell you. Although, personally, I should doubt it.
Why?
Well, strictly entre nous, Rigby isn't too hot as a detective.
Oh, I see. Well, I'll be going. Enjoy yourselves.
Thanks. Anytime you want another job done.
I hope I shan't come to that again. Good night, Miss McMara.
Good night.
So, Mr. Christopher Hampton.
He seems quite pleasant. A little on the hearty side, perhaps.
I'd like to know what his relationship with Parkin is. Something odd there. Oh, hello, Jerry.
Well, how'd you like the way I played How Little We Know?
Oh, fine. Have you ever thought of taking up the piano professionally?
Like me to play it again?
No. It's out of date now.
Oh, I don't know. It's one of those numbers that never dies out completely.
No, I mean it's out of date so far as we're concerned, Jerry. It's not how little we know now, but how much.
Excuse me, sir. You are Mr. Philip Odell, aren't you?
That's right.
The gentleman who just left you, the red-faced gentleman.
Mr. Hampton?
Yes, sir. He asked me to give you this.
Oh, thanks.
What is it?
A note.
I can see it's a note. What's it say?
Just give me a moment. On second thoughts, there is another job you can do for me. Will you call on me at 9:30 in the morning? C.H.
Why didn't he tell you that when he was here?
Maybe he didn't want to tell me in front of Parkin.
Will you go?
Maybe. But right now, I want a word with Inspector Rigby. I had to wait for those few words with Inspector Rigby. He wasn't in when I reached the yard. They said he'd be back in half an hour and offered me a dusty room to wait in, but I turned that down and went out into Whitehall where Heather was parked. I got into the car and we sat looking at the fog for a bit. Finally, she said,
Let's go down to the embankment. It's a nice night for looking at the river.
Well, in this fog?
Oh, it isn't very thick. Yet. Besides, I don't think I like sitting right outside Scotland Yard.
Okay, the embankment it is.
Ah, this is the second time a night out has ended badly for us.
Oh, is this one going to end badly, then?
It's going to end with a meeting with Inspector Rigby, isn't it?
Lovers' meetings end in journeys with Inspector Rigby.
Cleopatra's Needle. Will this do?
Sure. Sure, this is your party.
Somber-looking thing, isn't it?
What?
Cleopatra's Needle.
Perhaps it doesn't like the fog.
Perhaps it's yearning for the sun.
Where did it come from, anyway?
I don't know. Oh, Egypt, I suppose. Why else should they call it after Cleopatra?
One ought to know these things, you know.
Ought one?
Here we are trying to find out who murdered your brother and 2 other people, and we don't even know where Cleopatra's Needle came from, or why.
I don't see the connection.
Well, there isn't one.
But then why mention it?
No, just a subject for conversation.
Why? Wouldn't it do as well if we just sat here, held hands, and looked at the river? Well, what we can see of it.
I guess so.
All right. Let's do it. Here's my hand. You know, you haven't got your mind on this.
I know.
Why not?
I've got the jitters.
Why? I won't bite you.
I'm not frightened of you, Angel. It's Inspector Rigby.
Oh, he's a pompous young ass.
I know, but he's still the law. And he's got it firmly fixed in his mind that I know something about these murders which I haven't disclosed.
But that's nonsense.
Look, there's something I haven't told you. When they found Martin Sowerby's body, they also found a check for £300 made payable to me and signed by him.
What?
Well, this makes Rigby think that I've been doing the blackmail. And on top of that, he believes that the person who did the blackmail did the murders. Now, I've got no definite proof to put forward to counter that. Therefore, I am scared.
So that's what's been the matter with you all evening. Oh, why didn't you tell me this before?
Oh, why should I worry you?
It's very sweet of you, but I wish you had told me.
Quite suddenly, all the charm and excitement has gone out of this for me, Angel. The fact that I seem to have outsmarted myself doesn't make me feel very good.
Philip, what are you going to see Rigby for?
I've got an idea. It may be an idea that'll land me in the clear.
Oh, I hope so. I feel bad about getting you into all this in the first place.
I went into it with my eyes open.
Did you?
Well, my vision was somewhat obscured by that perfume you were wearing. What was it called? Indiscretion.
This is what comes of vanity. I was vain enough to think that I could make you help me instead of going to Ireland, and now see what I've done.
Angel, you didn't do it. I did it all on my fool self. I played it the wrong way, that's all.
It's nice of you to say that, Philip, but it only makes me feel worse. I'll never try to make a man do what he doesn't want to do.
Heather, now look, snap out of it, please. I didn't mean that.
Look.
What is it?
That big car. Just drawing up behind us. Isn't that the lady in mink, Mrs. Frey?
It is. Come on, we'll go and see what she wants. Hello. The lady in a fog again. Always the fog. One of these days, the fog's going to clear, Mrs. Frey, and then where'll you be?
Mr. Odell, I want to talk to you.
How did you know we were here?
I've been following you ever since you left the Paradise Room.
How did you know we were there?
That isn't important. Would you like to get in my car? There's more room in it than there is in yours.
Have we any guarantee that your gorilla isn't going to drive off with us?
Oh. Jay,
Yeah, Mrs. Frey?
come here.
Right.
Jay, I want you to go for a walk.
A walk?
Yes, I want to be alone with these people.
Okay. Where shall I walk to?
There's some nice steps over there leading down to the river.
Oh, is that meant to be funny?
Only moderately.
Walk up to Westminster Bridge and then come back. We'll be finished by then.
Okay.
Now, will you get in the car, Mr. Odell?
Okay. After you, Heather. Oh, by the way, you haven't met Heather McMara, have you?
How do you do?
Ah, I've heard a lot about you, Mrs. Frey.
Have you?
Yes. You've made quite a big impression on Philip.
What did you want to talk to us about, Mrs. Frey?
Well, as you probably know, the police are after me.
You should have come with me when I asked you to. I was rather offended when you skipped off over that roof.
Yes, I'm afraid I didn't do the right thing.
You didn't. He made everything look much worse by bolting.
That's what my husband says.
You've told him, then?
Yes.
Did he know anything about your blackmailing Hampton and Sowerby?
No. I told him about that, too.
How did he take it?
And he was very upset.
Yes, I should think he would be. It was fortunate for you that both Hampton and Sowerby were patients of your husband. Or did you fix that?
Well, Hampton came of his own accord. That gave me the idea. I persuaded Sowerby's doctor, GP, to recommend my husband.
How did you persuade him?
I don't think it would be necessary to go into that, but that isn't the point. My husband's waiting to see you.
Me?
Yes. He wants to tell you something.
What?
The truth about how George Maybrick died. He knows the whole story from what Sowerby and Hampton told him during their consultations with him.
Well, what good does he think that'll do?
Well, he thinks you'll know then who killed Ricky McMara and Marilyn Peters.
Why doesn't he go to the police?
I persuaded him not to.
Why did you do that?
I'm afraid.
You've no reason to be. You, haven't killed anyone, have you?
No. But they'll arrest me for blackmail.
They'll do that anyway.
Not if you agree to do what I suggest.
You're not offering me another bribe, are you?
No. Well, at least not money. Look, your whole interest in this is to find the murderer, isn't it?
Well?
My husband can tell you.
Where's the catch?
He thinks that you could persuade the police to drop the charge of blackmail against me in consideration of the assistance he'll give you in finding the murderer.
I see.
Why doesn't he make that proposition direct to Inspector Rigby?
He met Inspector Rigby this afternoon.
And he doesn't think Inspector Rigby would play?
No.
I see your husband's no mean psychologist after all.
Will you do it?
Well, I don't know that I can. Oddly enough, Inspector Rigby doesn't usually do what I suggest.
It might work, Philip. It would get you out of your trouble, you know.
But how do we know Mrs. Frey's on the level? She may be trying to pull something.
I'm not. Really, I'm not.
What I don't get is, why are you giving up now after 15 years?
I'm afraid.
Of what?
Of being arrested for murder.
Why? If you're innocent.
Please come. Time's getting so short.
Well, Heather, you're a woman. Is she on the level?
You know more about her than I do. You decide.
Okay, I'll take a chance. We'll come, Mrs. Frey.
Thank you. I'll call Jay. Jay,
Come in.
we're going to Wimpole Street now. Hurry.
Anything's better than walking about in this fog.
Well, Angel, keep your fingers crossed. Anything can happen now. We did the trip from the embankment to Wimpole Street in silence. Mrs. Frey sat in her corner of the back seat and stared out at the yellow fog swirling by. Now and then I caught a glimpse of her face reflected in the window as we passed through the ghost-like rays of a street lamp. I guessed I knew what was going on in her mind. As she was seeing it now, her 15 years of hatred had fired a trail of misery and bitterness and stark tragedy, and she was regretting those years. In the other corner sat Heather McMara, subdued too, but in a different way. Whatever was coming up out of the yellow fog to meet us, Heather was ready for. Well, finally we drew up in front of Dr. Frey's consulting rooms. I glanced at my watch. It was just 5 o'clock. We got out, and Mrs. Frey opened the door for us.
If you'll come in.
Thank you.
There's a light in his room. It's locked. Alexander? Alexander! Are you there? Alexander!
Isn't there another way in?
Yes, through the secretary's office. Come on, then. Alexander!
Dr. Alexander Frey was lying on a thick Persian rug, and his eyes were open and staring. They were almost clear of their sockets. The room had been worked over by an impatient and not very skillful hand. The floor was littered with papers and green cardboard folders. Someone had been at the doctor's case histories. We stood looking at this violent picture of still life for a long moment.
He's dead. He's dead.
Heather, take her away. Find somewhere for her to lie down.
Come along, Mrs. Frey. Odell will cope.
No. No, I must stay with him.
What good can it do? Come along with me.
Go with her, Mrs. Frey.
All right.
I went across to him. As I got closer, I saw his lips were parted, and I got a glimpse of his tongue. It was swollen and twisted. There were 2 livid bruises on his throat, one either side of the windpipe. I stood looking down at him, and then I saw a slight spasm pass across his twisted face. I quickly felt for his pulse. I thought I detected a slight movement, but I couldn't be sure. I tore off my jacket and flung it down, and then the door opened.
She's lying down in the waiting room.
Quick, have you got a mirror?
A mirror?
Yes, a pocket mirror. Hurry.
Oh, here you are. What are you doing?
Look, you see, there's a slight mist on the mirror. That means there's a little breath in him. We've got to get more.
What are we going to do?
Artificial respiration. Now get on the telephone, get Inspector Rigby. Tell him to come at once.
Okay.
And tell him to bring a doctor.
W-H-I 1 2 1 2.
I worked on Dr. Frey for all I was worth. There was a slight chance of saving his life, but only slight. I gave the artificial respiration all I'd got. It took Heather almost 20 minutes to raise Rigby. When finally she hung up, I was practically all out of energy.
Any result yet?
No.
Are you tired?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let me have a go.
Do you think you can do it?
Of course I can. I took a course of first aid. Now then, get out of the way.
All right, thanks. What about Rigby?
On his way. Sounded disagreeable as usual. Must have woken him up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it my imagination, or is his color a little better?
Yes, it is. It's distinctly better. Now keep at it, Angel. I'll take over when I've smoked a cigarette.
Do you think that's the best way to get your wind back? Go and see Mrs. Frey instead.
Oh, yes, better. I'd forgotten about her.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
It's going to be all right, Mrs. Frey. He wasn't dead.
Oh, thank heavens.
We got here only just in time.
I owe you a lot, Mr. Odell, one way and another.
What are you going to do when this blows over? If it does blow over?
Take your advice. Try to get back to a normal life.
With Frey?
If you'll have me. It isn't going to be easy to convince him. But I'll make a good wife after all that's happened.
You're fond of him, then?
Very. I've only just found that out.
Well, if he's a good psychologist, he'll understand.
I hope so.
We'll have to work pretty hard on him. Continuous artificial respiration until the police come.
Is there anything I can do?
Yes. Get blankets and hot water bottles. We'll have to treat for shock when he does come around.
Yes, sir.
And you might send Jay in. He can take a turn with the pumping.
Right.
We worked in relays for nearly an hour and a half. Dawn crept through the curtains, and I went over and looked out into the steel-gray street. The fog had gone, but it was a tired sort of dawn that had come in its place, as if the day it was ushering in had no heart for the job. We went on with the artificial respiration. Frey's color improved, but very slowly. Nobody spoke until suddenly Jay, who was giving the respiration, called out,
Hey, come here. I think he's trying to say something.
Okay, Jay, you can stop now.
All right.
He's conscious. I think he recognizes us.
Kitty, are you there?
Yes, Alexander. I'm here. Oh, we're saying something. I can't quite catch.
Where's Odell?
I'm here too, Dr. Frey.
Don't let them take Kitty.
No, I won't. Can you tell us what happened?
A man with a scarf over his face.
He's passed out again. Shall I start on him again?
No, he'll be okay now. Here, look, help me get him onto this couch.
Oh. Right. Okay, now, easy.
Over here. That's it. There. Just play with him. Heather, get the blankets and hot water bottles. He must be kept warm. Now, where the blazes is that inspector?
Oh, it's an hour and a half since he said he'd come. Shall I ring the yard again?
There's a car drawing up now.
Let me see. Yes, it's him. Now, look, Mrs. Frey, you've got to get out of here.
Why?
Rigby's liable to put the arm on you. It isn't going to do your husband any good if he knows you've been pinched, is it? Now, go for his sake.
All right.
Is there a way out the back?
Yes.
Then get going. Jay,
Hello.
you go with her.
Okay.
Oh, I hope she gets away. I like her.
So do I. Well, here's the law.
Do we answer it?
No, give Mrs. Frey a couple of minutes to get clear.
Oh, what a night.
How are you feeling, Angel?
Fine, considering everything.
You're a pretty good person to have around, you know. Remind me to tell you about it at length when we get a moment.
We're not likely to have any moments for some time, with that about to make an entrance.
Okay, they'll be clear of the house now. Let's go and let old Frosty face in.
Why is it you two always take so long to answer the door?
Well, we like to pretend it's going to be so different when we do, but it never is. Well, Sergeant, what kept you?
The inspector ran the car into a traffic island.
But you could have walked here several times over.
The inspector cut his head. Haven't you noticed his bandage? We had to stop to get it dressed.
Never mind about that. Where's the body?
In here, this way.
But he isn't dead.
No, we revived him.
Didn't you bring a doctor?
He got a nasty cut in his face. He had to have several stitches. We sent a message for another one to come, but it must have gone astray.
Oh, dear, what's happening to the Rigby efficiency machine?
All right, Odell, we don't want any facetiousness. Tell me what happened.
We came in and found him lying on that rug.
Who's we?
Heather and I.
I see. Go on.
Well, at first we thought he was dead, but the strangler missed out this time. Losing his touch, I guess. He hadn't squeezed all the life away. We worked on him until he came around.
Did he say anything?
Nothing much. Something about a man with a scarf over his face. Then he passed out again. He's all right, though. He's just shocked now.
How did you two come to be here in the first place?
We came by appointment.
At 5 o'clock in the morning?
Frey wanted to do a deal with me.
A deal?
Heather, you tell him. He's all set to disbelieve every word I say.
Well, Mrs. Frey followed us from the Paradise Room. She said her husband would tell us who the strangler is if Odell agreed to use his influence with you and let her go.
Odell's influence with me?
Well, he did say that he hadn't got any, but she persuaded us to come just the same.
Where's Mrs. Frey now?
She left.
You know there's a warrant out for her arrest, don't you? And you let her go?
You once told me you could handle this case without the assistance of amateurs, remember?
It was your duty to detain her.
That may be so, but she keeps a tame prize fighter, and he sometimes forgets he's tame.
I take a most serious view of this, Odell.
But, Inspector...
Leighton,
Yes,
take
Inspector.
Odell and Miss McMara to the yard.
Now?
Now. You can use Mrs. Frey's car. I see it's still outside the house.
All right. Well, what am I to do with them when I get them there?
Charge them formally with withholding information vital to the apprehension of a suspected murderer.
Oh, I'm sure that's wrong. You can't word a charge like that.
Do as I say.
Look, I'm withholding nothing. I'll tell you if you'll only listen.
Leighton, put the handcuffs on him if he doesn't go at once.
Come on, Mr. Odell. That bump on the head's been too much for him.
When you've seen them locked up, Leighton, report back here. Bring someone from Fingerprints and a photographer. Send a memo to radio asking for another general call to be put out for Mrs. Frey. Do you understand?
I understand. Do you want the memo in triplicate, sir?
Sergeant.
Yes?
You've had no breakfast, have you?
No, I haven't.
Would you like some?
Yes, I would. What's the catch?
There's no catch. It's an attractive proposition. You can have breakfast with Heather.
In a detention room at Scotland Yard?
No, a little cafe in Jermyn Street, right round the corner from Ryder Street.
What's so attractive about that? No, I mean the cafe, not Miss McMara's company.
Well, it happens to be close to Milton House. I want to spend 10 minutes in Milton House, alone.
I see.
Will you do it?
All right. I'm retiring next week. Why shouldn't I do a friend a favor?
Oh, good morning, Mr. Odell. We weren't expecting you until past.
I'm in a hurry, Parkin. Do you think I could see Mr. Hampton right away?
I think so, sir. He's having breakfast. Come in.
Thank you.
If you wait here, I will ask him.
Thank you.
Mr. Hampton will see you, Mr. Odell.
Thank you.
Come in, Mr. Odell. Didn't expect you so early. Sit down. Would you like a cup of coffee?
Oh, that's kind of you.
All right, Parkin.
Thanks.
Ah, black or white, Mr. Odell?
Black, please.
Thick night, eh?
Sticky night. Thank you. Good coffee.
You got my note, then?
Yes. I've been wondering why you wrote it.
I want you to do another job for me. Didn't you read it?
What's the job?
I'll let that wait for a minute. Drink your coffee in peace. Have a cigarette?
Oh, thank you. It's all right. I've got my lighter. Look, could we get some action into this? I have someone waiting for me.
Oh, well, I won't keep you long. You know I've been going to Dr. Frey for treatment, don't you?
You've been having a psychoanalysis, haven't you?
Yes. I told him a great many things. Things I wouldn't wish to be made public.
Things like the truth about what happened to George Maybrick, for instance?
Quite. Kitty Stapleton got at Frey's notes on my case and blackmailed me, and I don't want that to happen again. Do you understand?
And you want me to get Frey's notes, is that it?
Precisely. I'll pay well.
Why don't you go to Dr. Frey direct?
Because I think he was in the blackmail, too.
I see.
Well, will you take on the job?
Look, what did you get me up here for? What's behind it?
I've told you I want Dr. Frey's notes.
No, you don't. You've already got them.
What are you talking about?
You took them from Frey's office last night, right after you tried to squeeze the life out of him.
Ah, now I know you're talking nonsense.
Okay, I'm talking nonsense. Let's go right back to the beginning then, shall we? Back to the night George Maybrick died 15 years ago. Martin Sowerby found him alone with Kitty Stapleton. There was a fight. Maybrick cracked his head against the fender and passed out. Kitty had rushed out to get help, then Sowerby, thinking he had killed Maybrick, beat it too.
Sowerby had killed Maybrick. There was no thinking about it.
I'm a bit uncertain over the next bit. You appeared on the scene. Now, did Kitty fetch you, or did you come alone?
I came alone. I happened to be passing and saw the door was open. Maybrick's cottage was on my estate, you know. I went in and saw him lying there.
And then Kitty came back, and you told her Maybrick was dead.
He was dead.
How did you get her to keep her mouth shut? Nothing about a fight came out at the inquest. Kitty wasn't called as a witness, even. She skipped town that same day. Why?
I persuaded her it was in her best interest.
Oh, how'd you do that?
Kitty came of a very poor family. She'd known the most grinding poverty. But she had looks and ambition, and helped by Sowerby, she pulled herself out of it. She didn't want to be kicked back into it, so she took my advice and kept her mouth shut.
I don't quite figure your angle. What did you hope to get out of it?
Kitty was very, very beautiful in those days.
And you hope to collect a reward for helping her to escape exposure?
Why not?
You're a pretty average sort of rat, aren't you, Hampton?
Oh, come, we're both men of the world, aren't we?
Yes, but not that kind of world. At least I'm not.
Really?
So after she'd gone, you took Maybrick to one of your stables and arranged it to look as if he'd hanged himself.
That's right.
It's a well-thought-out story, Hampton, but there's one flaw in it.
Oh? What's that?
If you didn't kill Maybrick, then why were you so scared when the blackmail started? According to your story, Sowerby killed Maybrick. He'd have to take the rap if the truth came out. You were sitting relatively pretty.
Was I? After changing murder into suicide?
Well, you knew that Kitty had found out that Maybrick wasn't dead when she left you with him that night. She got that from Dr. Frey's notes.
Well, that's absurd. What had I to gain by murdering Maybrick?
You'd pulled some racing swindle to get yourself out of the red. Maybrick knew about it, and you were afraid he might talk. So when you came in and found him lying there unconscious, it was your big chance. You played very skillfully on Kitty's fears and shut her mouth, and then you dealt with Maybrick.
Can you prove this?
I don't know. But then I don't have to. I'm not working for the cops. I'm working for you, remember?
Then why are you going into all this?
Oh, I function better when I know everything.
What else do you want to know?
Nothing. I know it all now. Well, I'll be seeing you. Thanks for the coffee.
Wait a minute. Where are you going?
Scotland Yard.
Oh, no, you don't. Come back, Odell.
Oh. So we play it with guns now, do we?
We do. Sit down again.
Okay. What's the matter with your fingers?
My fingers?
There's something on them. Something that'll put you around the neck. No!
Give me that gun.
Don't be a fool, Hampton. You've had it now. Sit down.
Where are you going?
I'm going to the window to signal to my good friend Sergeant Layton of the CID. He's seen me. He won't be long. Got anything to say, Mr. Hampton?
You won't get away with this, you know. You can prove nothing.
I told you it's the cops' job to get proof. It's up to them to prove that you killed Ricky McMara because you thought he alone was responsible for the blackmail. Then they'll have to prove that you knocked his girlfriend off because you thought she was carrying on where he had left off. That's their job. The only thing I can do is to prove you killed Martin Sowerby.
Why should I want to kill him?
Well, with McMara and Marilyn Peters out of the way, the blackmail still went on. You were desperate. Who could it be? And then you thought of Sowerby. You found out from Frey that he, too, was having a psychoanalysis. Obviously, he had opened his mouth, or that's the way you saw it. So you shut him up, having first tried to throw suspicion on me by making him write that check.
You say you can prove this. How?
Remember when you came to the Paradise Room last night?
Well?
You came because you've been scared of me for some time now. Like Inspector Rigby, you were beginning to get the idea that I was responsible for the blackmail. So you kept tabs on me. But in talking to me, you made one very bad move.
What was that?
You told me Martin Sowerby was dead.
Well, so he was.
Yes, but only 6 people knew. Rigby, for some reason best known to himself, ensured that nobody else could know. And yet you knew. How? Obviously because you had killed him yourself.
You...
Oh, no, you don't. Stay where you are, Mr. Hampton. It would give me quite a lot of pleasure to put a bullet in your hide.
Sergeant Layton and Miss McMara to see you, sir.
Oh, come in, Sergeant. Better put some handcuffs on him.
You can prove none of this, Odell. Not a thing.
Come on, Mr. Hampton. We're in a hurry. See you later, Mr. Odell.
Right, we'll follow you down, Sergeant. Well, there you are, Angel. The man who killed your brother.
How did you find out, Philip?
Poor sucker just came and told me.
How can I ever thank you?
Well, you remember you said we'd have a really good night out when I'd found the person who killed Ricky?
I remember.
Well, how's about it? We're still dressed for the part after our unsuccessful try last night.
But it's only 9 o'clock in the morning. We can't start making whoopee at this hour.
Why not?
Well, it doesn't seem decent.
Oh, dear, you've got all the traces of conventionality there, Angel. I'll have to remove that. Parkin!
Yes, sir?
Do you think we could have some of Mr. Hampton's best brandy?
Well, yes, sir, I suppose you could. Were you wanting to celebrate something, sir?
Yes. Mr. Hampton's arrest for murder.
For murder? Indeed, sir.
Aren't you surprised, Parkin?
It isn't my place to be surprised, sir.
Do you mean to say you never knew anything about the murders?
No, madam. It was none of my business what Mr. Hampton did with his spare time. Will there be anything else, sir?
No, Parkin. Just the brandy. Well, that's more or less the end of the story. Heather and I drank a bumper of the Hampton brandy, and then, feeling a trace high, we went down to the yard. In triumph, I couldn't help feeling. Inspector Rigby accepted Christopher Hampton as the man he had been looking for with some reluctance. I think he hated to part up with the idea that I was the guy with the strangling fingers. Nice character. Anyway, he finally accepted it and then went to work on Hampton. Now, looking back over this story, I can see that maybe Rigby didn't come out of it with any great credit. But then, you've got to remember that he was working under a great disadvantage. He couldn't work underground as I had done. This had been a complex case from the start to finish, with plenty of hidden and conflicting motives. And to get at it, you had to go underground. And Rigby couldn't do that by virtue of his position. I was in a position to move faster and move farther, that's all. I had all the brakes, he hadn't. But when he got at Hampton, he really showed his quality. The way he took Mr. Christopher Hampton apart was really something. At the end of it, Rigby had a case, and a sound one. There is, however, an interesting epilogue. The following night, Heather and I were still out celebrating. Exactly what wasn't any too clear by this time. I was in the little bar on Half Moon Street where all this had started, waiting for her, as usual, when up comes the barman. Hello? I ain't seen you lately. No, I've been heavily disguised.
Really?
Mm-hmm. As a detective.
Catch anything?
Nothing much. The people you go looking for in a murder case are rarely worth finding.
Murder, eh? 3 murders. Blimey.
Evening, Belle.
Oh, good evening, Rosie. The usual?
If you please. I'm waiting for someone.
I beg your pardon?
I said I'm waiting for someone. A gentleman.
Oh, how nice.
I just mentioned it in case you got ideas, see?
Here you are, Rosie. Pink gin.
Skin off your nose.
Skin off yours.
I'm going out with Si tonight, Bill.
Oh, you're in for a lively time, then.
Oh, you're telling me. Never a dull moment with Si. Best fella on a party I ever knew. Generous, too. And warm-blooded. I could tell you a thing or two about that, Bill.
Yes, dear, but not now. Si's just come in.
Rosie, darling, how are you? I'm sorry I'm late. I couldn't get away from that cold-blooded commissioner.
I've just this minute got here, Si.
Oh. Hello, Odell.
Hello, Si.
I didn't expect to see you here.
I didn't expect to see you either. Been hearing about what you get up to when you're off duty. You're quite the surprise packet, aren't you, Si?
Well, we've got to run along. Come on, Rosie. I've got a nice surprise all planned.
Oh, goody. Bye, Bill.
Goodbye. Manners are better matters, those two.
Philip.
Hello, Heather.
I'm seeing things.
Are you, Angel?
I've just passed someone who looks like Inspector Rigby with the fluffy little blonde.
It was Inspector Rigby, Angel.
What? He's human after all.
Human? Oh, I could tell you a thing or two about Simon Rigby, miss. Pranks? Oh, what a boy.
Give me a dry martini, quick.
Mind if I put the radio on?
Please do.
This is coming from the Paradise Room. Best band in London.
Seem to have heard of that place. Perhaps we should pay a return visit sometime.
Oh? When did you say you were going to Ireland?
Gosh, I'd forgotten all about that. Nothing like a few murders to take your mind off things.
I haven't thanked you properly for helping me, Philip. Let me kiss the top of your ear. When did you say you were going back to Ireland?
What's that perfume you're using, Angel?
That was Lady in a Fog, a serial by Lester Powell, with Robert Beatty as Philip Odell and Sheila Manahan as Heather McMara. Kitty Stapleton was played by Mary Wimbush, Christopher Hampton by James Thomason, Inspector Rigby by Edward Jewsbury, and Sergeant Layton by Geoffrey Seagull.